welcome to another the Utility Advisory Committee meeting. So I think the first thing is to make sure that, so we have Josh, everything was posted for the meeting. Thank you. And then we have Howard Nail on the phone. Howard, you there? It's going to be a little bit
Yes,
of a...
I'm here. Hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So...
All right, I'm gonna mute again.
Okay, I guess I'll just, we think we got everybody, I'll just go ahead and we'll just do a quick roll call. Ned?
Here.
Larry Carr, myself. Marty.
Here.
And Andy.
I'm here, I think.
And then we are missing Eileen and Greg Todd. So otherwise, we have 5 here, we have a quorum. We will go to the Pledge of Allegiance then.
Yeah.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll go to the comment period. The first comment period, which is just related to the agenda items. And if any, was there any written comments or emailed comments? Okay. And so we'll go to the phone. So if anybody has any comments, well, I should say, I'm sorry, there's more in the audience this time than normal. So is there anybody from the audience that would like to make comments?
Two mayors argue.
Joe Hardy, Mayor of Boulder City. I am grateful to have the Southern Nevada Water Authority here and appreciate their willingness to work with us and getting our wastewater meaningfully taken care of so that we can enjoy the opportunity to share resources in such a way that we can get return flow credits or use it meaningfully in some way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Carr, committee members, Karen McManus, I'm also here to speak on the issue with the wastewater reuse. I do appreciate the work that SNWA put into their presentation. And as I look through that, it certainly appears they've covered the options that are available. A couple of questions, though, that came to my mind was, what are the costs, ongoing costs, of the different options? And, you know, whether it is returning wastewater into the city of Henderson or reusing it here in Boulder City, what type of costs are involved going forward? So it appears that they will be providing an estimate on the initial costs, the upfront costs that are necessary, but who would maintain the line back into Henderson? My understanding is that it would require 4 lift stations in order to do that. Who would be responsible for the maintenance on that? They made note that the city of Henderson would require a interlocal agreement with them on handling that. They have costs, obviously, that are involved. When their plant requires maintenance or upgrades, what kind of costs would they be looking to Boulder City for? So I think there are a number of questions that need to be asked. I know it has come up before that the residents of Boulder City essentially subsidize the SNWA charge on the water that the golf courses use. So if we were to reuse that wastewater, that would save that amount of money also for the residents of Boulder City. So those are the types of things I think need to go into the discussion of this. I've expressed in the past my concerns about the fact that that return water line into the city of Henderson obviously could have multiple uses, and that may lead to greater expansion of development in the El Dorado Valley that most folks that I've heard from is not desirable. So those are the types of questions that I think need to be discussed and brought forward to the city council if they are to make the final decision on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the audience that'd like to make a comment? Okay, we'll go to the phone line then, and it's 702-589-9629. Again, the number is 702-589-9629. Okay, not hearing any comments, and we will have another comment period at the end of the meeting. Then we will close out the comment period and go to the first agenda item, which is for possible action, approval of the December 7th Utility Committee minutes. Did anybody have any comments on the minutes? Howard, did you have any comments?
No, I don't. I do not.
Okay, I guess hearing no comments, and I don't have any further comments, then I will make a motion to approve the minutes. Do I get a second?
I'll second it.
Comments? So, everybody, if all approves, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Did I hear it, Howard?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So that passes unanimously. Okay, so then, see, do you have any other comment? Did, Joe, do you have any comments on the minutes?
I do not.
Okay. Okay, so then we will go to item number 2, the presentation offered by the Southern Nevada Water Authority on the Boulder City's options for recycling treated effluent water. So I guess I just, we talked briefly before the meeting about the best way to proceed. Trying to figure out, and I don't know if you guys had comments, whether to just sort of get the 4 alternatives out there first and then go back to each slide or stop at each slide. I myself has some comments on it, and I think we've each had it. So is there a preference to stop at each slide or go through it and then come back? That's,
Yeah, it's probably easiest, once I get to having discussed the key elements of each of the alternatives, that I stop and ask if there are questions related to that particular alternative at that time. And then, of course, we'll take questions even further at the end.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Doa Ross. I'm the Deputy General Manager for Engineering for the Southern Nevada Water Authority. And I appreciate you making time for me to come back and let you know where we are so far in this process. If you recall, back in, I believe it was August, I had stood before the City Council and proposed the ability to start looking into what to do with the wastewater, obviously, for Boulder City, and given permission to go ahead and have our staff engage with Boulder City staff to come up with possible alternatives, whether it be return flow credits or reuse, to be able to vet those out and see what the City of Boulder City decides is their best option. All right. So a little bit of overview. City of Boulder City currently operates a wastewater treatment facility with an average effluent rate of about 33.5 million gallons per month, which is a little over 1,200 acre feet per year. And of course, there are variabilities depending on the time of the year that is. The city does have a contract with a local quarry, where they receive about 7.2 million gallons per month of that water, treated wastewater, to be able to use in their operation. The remaining roughly 967 acre feet per year is then discharged to evaporation ponds. As note, Boulder City is the only SNWA partner agency that doesn't do anything for recovering that indoor use as a means of any sort of a return flow credit or anything like that. That's why we're here today. We're trying to make that possible for you guys. The city does operate 2 golf courses that are irrigated using a combination of raw and potable water. In 2021, Boulder City Golf Course used about 313.8 million gallons of water for irrigation, and the Boulder City Creek used about 419.8 million gallons of water. The city also maintains numerous parks, as you're aware, and all of those parks are fed through the raw water system that is delivered to you from Southern Nevada Water Authority. So this just kind of, in a bar chart, shows you the numbers that we're talking about. Obviously, every single month is slightly different, but overall, this is all of the wastewater that's treated by your treatment plant, looking at it from a per month basis based on 2021 year. This is the water that is currently sold to the quarry. So the difference between the last slide and this slide is what's currently being evaporated, which is right here. As you know, Southern Nevada, our water allotment from the Colorado River strongly depends on the lowered amount of consumptive use. Anything that we aren't able to return back to Lake Mead is considered consumptive use. So for us as a community, for all of Southern Nevada, all the messaging that SNWA does, everything that we put forward is always about trying to drive down that consumptive use. So for our goal, anything that we are able to capture and reuse or send back for return flow credits reduces that consumptive use number. So going through these alternatives. The first alternative, and these are in no particular order, I'm just putting them down on the slide here. Whoops. First alternative is conveyance to Lake Mead via Henderson's wastewater collection system. This is what we called the wastewater return system for Henderson. This would result in 100% of Boulder City's wastewater being utilized as treated effluent for return flow credits. It does require an operating agreement with City of Henderson to treat that wastewater. Boulder City's wastewater treatment facility would do the initial screening of the solids and then would send basically what you call kind of the sewage water back to City of Henderson to do that next step of treatment and go through the treatment plant and be returned to the Las Vegas Wash where we get the return flow credits out there. It does minimize operational responsibilities and costs because, again, this is a treatment plant that you currently operate right now. It's just instead of sending it to evaporation ponds, you'd be sending it to a pipeline and lift station to keep on moving. It does not require wastewater treatment plant upgrades or replacement to your current treatment plant.
Okay, so if we could, so I think we'd best, do you want to go through the description or?
Yes, so
Okay.
this is just kind of an overview of the path that we have to take and a description of some of the key system components. So this particular option would take the wastewater from the Boulder City wastewater treatment plant through a pipeline that would, and I do want to point out, this particular alignment is different than the initial alignment we looked at because now there are a bunch of solar arrays in the way. We can't take the original alignment that we had originally looked for back in 2019, but that's okay. There's still another way to get there. So this would require heading a little bit towards the El Dorado Valley area, would require 2 lift stations to get it up to City of Henderson. And the graph that you see on the bottom is just kind of a representation to sort of show you the elevation on the far left is kind of where it's starting from. The elevation on the far right is where it's getting to, which is why we need lift stations, because you have to raise it up in elevation. It's not by gravity. This would include 2 pumping stations with about 250 kilogram liters of storage, 12-inch pipeline, and 24-inch casing to be able to connect to the City of Henderson system. I'll stop at this point if you have some questions. I can get into some of the details on anything else you have.
One question I have is Henderson on board? I mean, if they got the delivery system, once you get to the top of the hill beyond Railroad Pass, do they have enough capacity in their lines to take that inflow of sewage effluent at that point to get them down to their treatment plant?
Yes, but, I want to say the but. Henderson does recognize that they do have some limitations with some of their facilities further downstream that they have told us would require some capital investments into that to help do some expansion within their system to be able to accommodate the additional flow. That same requirement applies whether Boulder City returns their wastewater or not. it is still required as well of El Dorado Valley. So it's not something that they're coming back saying, this is only Boulder City that needs to contribute. Whether Boulder City decides to do this or not, they're getting contributions from the developer for El Dorado Valley's portion, because all of this area wasn't in their original plan, but they're able to receive those flows immediately.
This is Howard Anala. I don't believe what you're telling us is true. I talked with the city of Henderson, and they said they weren't even planning on any expansion until 10 years from now. And then when it was brought up that this was going to occur, that it was only asked to look at what would be the impact of 2 million gallons a day of flow to the Henderson collection system. And that, I don't understand why that was done, because the capacity of our Boulder City treatment plant is 2.5 million gallons per day. So I would at least want to understand what it would take to take our full capacity.
Their analysis,
That's one little flaw in the thing, but regardless, the collection, from my understanding and talking with the city of Henderson, is that collection system has to have some major improvements. And even if they started today, it would take at least 3 to 4 years to have a system available to us to start doing this project. You may have things other contrary to that I don't have any updates on, but that's all. And I've talked with the staff there within the last month. So I think it needs to be a little bit more clearer to us of what those capacities are.
Yeah, in our conversations with City of Henderson, they analyzed for the 2 million gallons per day. That's what they analyzed for delivery, not 2.5. Keeping in mind that Boulder City today is 1.2. So,
Well, that doesn't matter. If you're going to design it, it has to be designed for the capacity of our treatment plant, not for some existing number that's going to have to be expanded at a later date. We're already at 2.5 million gallons a day design, so we need to have that capacity that we're going to add at least be 2.5 million gallons per day, but it probably should even have some fudge factor in there as well.
right, they went off of, as I understood, I thought the treatment plant was 2 million gallons per day is what I was under the understanding of, which Henderson believed that too, which is why they modeled their system with the capacity of the treatment plant. So if it is greater than...
They asked by SNWA to do 2 million gallons. That's why they did 2 million gallons. But in our permit, we are permitted for 2.5 million gallons per day of flow.
Okay. I didn't know that your current treatment plant could actually deliver that. Perhaps it's permitted for 2.5, but it's only designed and built to deliver up to 2 at this moment. I'm not sure. But I was under the understanding from communication with staff that it was a 2 million gallon per day capacity at this time.
Well,
So that's
can-
what Henderson modeled.
That's a small piece, but that's the important piece that has to be looked at. We have to know that.
Okay. Well, Henderson did say that there have to be capital investments into their plan, which they did not currently have funded right now. That's why they would be looking for that, but they are doing their own capital improvement plan at this moment. All of my communications with them said they'd be able to do this, especially at the 1.2 right now, unless Boulder City has plans of growing significantly that I'm not aware of. They can definitely take that, but they need to do the upgrades in the next couple of years to be able to continue to receive that and any future use, which does include El Dorado Valley. Now, I'm just going off of the information that I've been given from City Henderson staff. They gave us a breakdown of what that cost participation would be. They also gave us a breakdown of what connection charge cost would be, because you would essentially become a customer of City of Henderson for them receiving the sewer. Now, because you're doing the initial screening of the sewer, you're not giving them full raw sewage, they would give you a significant discount in the operating costs, the actual sewer bill, if you will, because they don't have to carry that.
The only thing you're taking out is the screenings. That's not a significant part of the process. The strength of the wastewater is what's going to cause an impact to Henderson, and their treatment capacities are well beyond ours. And that's the organic load. The the solids load is, or by screenings, is nothing.
Well-
What is the cost, did they give, what is the estimated cost then for that? Did they give you a cost?
It'd be an annual operating cost of about anywhere from $400,000 to $500,000 a year.
Would that be a city cost, or would SNWA pick up that cost?
No, that's an operating cost to the city of Boulder City.
That would be by who?
That would be City of Boulder City.
Right, and then what about, would they charge us new connection fees for each one of our users?
It's not per user. They're basing it, basically it's an amount for the initial 1.2 MGD being delivered. It's kind of like the equivalent of connections. They said that part is actually negotiable. They're willing to talk about what that would look like. Normally, they have a cost per connection, but since the connections are not their customers, it would be sort of a one and done cost to the city of Boulder City to buy into essentially the same costs that everybody else buys into, which is treatment plant costs and all that kind of stuff. So they said they're willing to negotiate what that is. Right now, they just threw out a rough number for an initial connection charge, but that is something that's not yet been finalized because they just were talking off the top of their head at the moment. And I said, well, we'd have to figure that out because one way or another, we need to understand exactly what the cost would be from capital improvement. This is all why we don't have costs on these slides, by the way, because a lot of this is still very up in the air and has to be negotiated. What's the total cost from investing in their capital and in improvements of their system, as well as the connection charge? They were pretty firm on, they know what the operating cost is, but the cost for the capital investment as well as connection charge is something that would be up for negotiation with them.
I mean, that price sounds a little not very realistic to me because the treatment plant, the city of Boulder City's treatment plant has to meet, actually does not have any permit limits on it as far as meeting any organic load or solids load. And it's a lagoon system, so at best it would be like 30 milligrams per liter of BOD, which is the organic part, and then the TSS or the solids part of it's like 30 milligrams per liter. Whereas the city of Henderson has to treat, they also have to remove other things like ammonia, nitrogen, and phosphorus, and those costs are extremely more expensive than what the city of Boulder City is paying for its treatment plant right now. So I think these costs, I wouldn't even throw out a cost. I would just say it's a significant cost because you're not really talking apples and apples here. You got really two different varieties of things talking here for effluent quality. And plus the fact, if you design it for 2.5 million gallons a day, that's taking away 25,000 people capacity at the city of Henderson's plant. So, you know, that all needs to be considered in these costs.
Definitely.
And what was their rough estimate for the connection?
The rough estimate for the connection was $12 million.
12 million, and is that the city pays that, or would that be the SNWA?
It would be part of the initial capital investment,
But making sure I'm understanding which one, the SNWA or the city of Boulder City?
part of the SNWA overall package, yeah.
Okay, but that's $12 million. Okay.
You know, there'd also be a fairly significant power cost with the pumping load, pumping that much water every day up over that many feet of elevation. So I'm sure that's probably factored in, but that's a significant cost too.
Yes.
Boy, is it factored in though? That's an operating cost.
Yeah, that's a,
That's a very significant cost.
yeah, when we initially looked at it, the operating costs, and of course, you guys have the ability to kind of wheel your power a little differently and have benefits of generating your own power. But we looked at it for a rough estimating cost of about $300,000 per year for operating those.
So just to kind of speak on that, that's in the NV Energy service territory where the pumping stations are currently located.
Okay, so you'd have to be an NV Energy customer for that?
Right.
Okay. And I believe that our estimate on the operating cost was based off of NV Energy, not knowing what you guys can do within your own territory. So a lot of our numbers that we did were extremely conservative because we don't know what abilities you guys have internally to be able to do things. So we just took it off of what the kilowatt hour charge is that we know, for example, any other place in NV Energy's territory is having to pay, and that's what we went off of, is the power load on these things, understanding about how much they need to move and what that kilowatt hour charge is.
Now, the other thing I think that's sort of, because there was a comment about return flows, I'm assuming, so maybe I'm assuming wrong, since SNWA is paying for this, that you guys will get the return flow credits, Boulder City would not.
All of the return flow credits are returned to the authority throughout the entire community. It doesn't matter from which treatment plant they're coming from. That's part of the negotiation with the Bureau of Reclamation. All those return flow credits just go into the master bank of SNWA's allowable water that we can take out. So for every gallon returned, SNWA may take another gallon out, and it doesn't count against our consumptive use.
Okay, right now, though, Boulder City is, if I'm reading the contract right, for the cooperative agreement, is not applicable for reuse of the reuse water. And I'm not sure I understand exactly how the reuse and return flow credits go. So would our contract be changed? Because I believe it's not applicable to us since we didn't have any return flows. And so I don't know if that would be returned, or if the contract would stay the same, which then the benefit for the Boulder City, I'm not sure what the benefit. We would be returning our water, but it would not necessarily help Boulder City's demand, and it would not reduce Boulder City's demand at all in this alternative.
Well, it does help Boulder City's demand as being a member agency of SNWA.
Yes, I agree with that. I guess, but comparatively, as we get to alternative two, with the reuse of the water, then we can actually reduce our demand in Boulder City because we can use the effluent to replace some of our raw water.
Right.
And so that's one advantage. I just want to make sure people see that that's a big difference.
Right. And there is a difference between recycling indoor water use by return flow credits versus reusing water outdoors. It's not a one-to-one. It is definitely a difference in the amount of efficiencies, but it's either way. I mean, they're both great options. All of them actually are all great options, and they get to what we're doing, which is to stop 100% of the consumptive use happening in this community. So everything we do, whether we're returning the water or reusing the water, is reducing that and essentially extending our resource. That's what we're asking for.
Yeah, I guess so we would get 100%. So if we go back to the slide before that, and then if anybody else has more comments, but I think, so the 100% utilization, that's good. And then I guess we also, so if we have anybody else that would sell the water, my understanding is that the effluent is the first choice for dust control if anybody's doing anything in that valley. So if there's any construction additional, I don't think there's much more solar going on down there, but anything different, that water would be available for dust control.
Sure, anything that Boulder City sells as a use of that wastewater, it'd be just less that's being sent back to the return flow system.
Okay. So then now we know there is a pretty hefty cost with the operating agreement with the city of Henderson. The minimizes operational responsibilities. I'm not sure that really minimizes it. We still, I think, have pretty much the same we currently have.
The only thing that it's doing when we say minimizes operational responsibilities is that your treatment plant operates as it does today. There's no difference to your treatment plant. You're doing exactly the same thing. The only thing you are gaining is 2 additional lift stations and some pipe, but you're not having to do anything different in your treatment.
Okay.
Whereas the option of reuse does. So
That's
Yeah.
true. But right now, this does not require a wastewater treatment plant upgrade or replacement. But I believe we're getting at the age of the plate. So for this project, we don't. But I think
Right.
Boulder City itself would still probably, we have some stuff that are in the queue already.
sure.
And if the treatment plant is upgraded or not, then that doesn't need to be done. And if this is done, then all the capital that's in the queue would have to be done.
Correct.
Plus probably additional more, because I believe the plant, Joe, isn't the plant have some age to it?
It was recently remodeled, redesigned within the last 10, 15 years.
Okay, and so,
But Joe, we are improving our headworks, right? And that's what we're talking about here. We still have to spend that $1 million on our headworks, correct?
No, we're actually shifting we're not gonna spend the $1 million on our headworks. We're gonna use ARPA funds for the headworks replacement. Because ARPA funds couldn't be used to match for that project and the amount of time it took to get the grant funds.
Okay, well, let me understand this. Alternative one, then, it's taking the raw wastewater over to Henderson or the treated wastewater to Henderson?
Treated wastewater.
Okay, so we're talking treated wastewater. So our treatment plant stays intact. Our whole system has to stay intact. And from what you were in that overview slide that you had up, you were using numbers like million gallons per month and acre feet per year and so forth.
Oh,
If you break those down into million gallons per day, basically what you're saying is that we're discharging about, on an average of 1.1 million gallons a day. And then the agreement with the quarry utilizes about 0.24 million gallons a day, or roughly 240,000 gallons per day. And all we're talking about pumping back for return flow credit then is 0.86 million gallons a day, or 860,000 gallons a day is all you're going for a 1-for-1 credit for. So that $12 million plus the $300K per year operating costs and the $4,000 to $5,000 for connection fees, $400,000 to $500,000 for connection fees per year, or whatever Henderson's O&M costs, you're talking about that for the cost of 860,000 gallons per day of water. That's what we're talking about here, right?
in actual true what's being produced today, yes, but no, everything was sized based on 2 million gallons per day ability.
So what is our current budget for our treatment plant, Joe?
As far as the annual budget,
Yeah, what's our annual budget?
I'd have to look that up for you, Howard.
I mean, we need to start looking at some numbers like that because, you know, this is all food for thought. We got to start looking at those numbers too and seeing, you know, one of the jobs of the UAC is to control costs for our users. And I think we need to really seriously, you know, what was brought up by the comments at the beginning of the meeting by the participants out there, I think we really need to start looking at some costs here. So we need to listen, but we're raising a lot of red flags.
So the overall cost, because for your, do you have a sort of an overall estimated cost for that? That just the initial
The capital
cost, yeah.
expense was upwards on the upper 46 million.
40. Now then, so just trying to make sure I'm understanding completely. Now, is that SNWA completely covers that 100%, or does Boulder City have to cover some of that?
I think that's the part that we probably have to discuss. The only money that we had set aside at the time that this project was looked at, the estimate for the project was $26 million, and that was what the money was in the capital plan, although we removed the project at the request of City Council. Today's dollars, it has gone up a lot. So in our budget right now, we have 26 million. We'd have to have a decision by our board to decide whether they're going to move forward with paying the full amount or expect Boulder City to come up with some of that.
Okay, and then is that, so let's just say it was the 26. Now, is that going to be incorporated into our capital cost to be paid back? Or is that 100% paid and we don't pay anything in the future?
That's the decision of the board, yeah.
No, okay, I'm talking about the 26 million.
Oh, the 26, no, that would be fully paid for, not expected to be paid back by City of Boulder City.
So it goes into the, what is it, the RPAC or whatever, so it doesn't come back into our payments?
That's correct,
Okay.
yeah. That money's already budgeted and in the actual plan, the original plan that was approved. It's just the project itself was removed.
So, but I think that's the reason that we were asking about the costs on all these alternatives, so. to know
Understand.
If we have to, because in this case, there's a good chance we would pay 20 million, Boulder City would have to pay 20 million to do this.
It's possible.
It's a
It's
possibility.
really depends on the authority and the board and how they want to move on that. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't include costs in this, because really no matter what we do, when we get down to a selection that the city is comfortable with, that they really want to pursue, we'll dive into a much more detailed engineered estimate. And at that time, we really have to have the board to take a look at it and say, okay, are we willing to go ahead and, get the additional money? Or is it something that Boulder City pays a portion through some, long-term loan? Whatever the mechanism may be, it's something that the authority board will take a look at. Right now, my job was really to kind of take a look at which of these alternatives actually is viable and which one the city really has a preference for.
What we're trying to do is get all the data so
Understand.
we can help advise the city and the city council
Yeah.
to make sure that.
And I know when I go to the city council meeting, I will have these costs associated with that embedded into the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any more questions on alternative one? Thank you for your patience.
No problem. Okay. Alternative 2 is the direct reuse for Boulder City. This is what we call the recycled water system. So this would provide 100% utilization of the treated effluent. It does not require an operating agreement with City of Henderson to treat any returned wastewater. It requires wastewater treatment plant upgrades or replacement because it has to be an improved water quality effluent that's needed. It does involve repurposing existing raw water line and blending potable and treated wastewater for irrigation. Water quality implications of using high TDS treated water during the winter requires monitoring and management on the part of the user. And it does increase your operating costs versus some of the other alternatives, and I'll go through that. So initially, when we had looked at the recycled water option, we wanted to see what's the path of least resistance. Could we simply just provide recycled water to the 2 golf courses and maybe the Veterans Memorial Cemetery? What's close proximity to the treatment plant? When we looked at that, we realized Boulder City would not actually utilize all of its wastewater. So we would be kind of right back where we are. There would be a reduced amount going to the ponds, but we wouldn't fully utilize it, and that wasn't good enough. So between staff within Boulder City and our team, we kind of put our heads together and looked at a whole bunch of different things. And what we ended up coming up with is saying, right now, SNWA delivers raw water through the Black Mountain Reservoir to the city of Boulder City. And through that reservoir, there's a series of raw water pipes that deliver water to everything that's irrigated in Boulder City through gravity. So we looked at what if we were to repurpose that line and that reservoir for the recycled water. So we would do an improvement of the treatment plant, which would have to add additional treatment to it to upgrade its ability. We'd add a pump station and essentially turn that gravity line, we'd have to build a new line up to the reservoir and utilize the existing gravity line. So we would pump the water from the treatment plant up to the reservoir. That reservoir allows you then to manage your water use. So some months you'll have less water use, some months you'll have more water use. And that reservoir will allow you to kind of go with the ebb and flow as needed and feed all of the areas with that recycled water. It doesn't involve having to do a bunch of purple pipe distributed throughout the system. It would only be the one pipe that goes from the pump station to that reservoir. This particular option, like I said, includes a wastewater treatment facility and pumping station, treated wastewater pipeline, which is a long distance to go back up to that reservoir, but then allows everything that's currently using raw water for irrigation to actually use recycled water for irrigation. So there are some implications with this and some things that people need to be aware of. Using recycled water for your irrigation requires a lot more from a maintenance standpoint. It means additional monitoring and safety issues, not safety, but water quality issues that are necessary to pay attention to your grass area, things like that. It has more salts within that type of water, so you really have to monitor it, make sure you're getting proper drainage, that the grass roots aren't sitting in it. There's more involved from an overall operation maintenance standpoint, and then of course additional treatment ability within the plant. This one does have a higher operating cost though. This one, when we looked at it, the operating cost was roughly $1.7 million a year to Boulder City.
Why are you saying we need higher water quality? Because currently, our water quality is allowed, we're permitted right now to put that water out as irrigation.
It-
And I don't understand why that would change why would that be a change if it were used for irrigation? If it were mixed with raw water, why would that change things? Because right now, we're permitted to if we could take all of our water out to the solar arrays, we could get rid of it all through that without any change in our permit. Our
Right.
permit right now is set up for us to use it for irrigation purposes.
If the particular water quality that you have coming out of the treatment plant is not suitable for grass. It's not suitable for golf courses, for parks. There are additional permitted requirements that are necessary to put it in an area where people will be, where animals will be, things like that.
Well, most of that involves, that the treatment quality out of our effluent quality, I would have to look at the numbers again, but I believe it meets 30 milligram per liter for BOD and TSS. And what really needs to be considered in that is the amount of coliforms that are allowed to go out of the effluent. And for groundwater, it's less than 2.2 colonies per 100 mils for fecal coliform. And I suspect I don't know this for sure, but I would suspect our chlorine treatment system, our disinfection system, is designed to meet that water quality. And that's really all you have to do is improve. If any improvements were needed, it would be with the disinfection part of it, not any other water quality.
yes, it's additional disinfection that's required, as well as a pump station to be able to move the
But
water back up.
That's true. I mean, right now, we have to chlorinate now and meet a permit limit for that, and it's the same number. So I don't understand why we would include that. This actually seems
Howard,
to
just a
be-
second, did you hear it? Because that's one thing I was gonna ask too. So you're saying the 1.2 includes the pumping?
Yes,
So did you hear that, Howard, that they're including the
Yeah.
pumping in the 1.2?
Yeah, this seems like a really good alternative to me. But, because we're using about 2.2, right now, currently for Boulder City Golf Course and for Boulder Creek, between the two of them, we use about 2.2 million gallons a day for water. And if we could get rid of the less than 1 million gallons a day of water that we have left over, when we, less the water that we send over to the solar plants, we could get rid of all of that water right there. But then again, the issue becomes getting credit for that.
so
'Cause that's not-
we actually, oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's not going back to the lake, it's going to irrigation.
Okay, so what I want to do is take a quick second going through the direct reuse calculation. And actually, J.C. Davis with our staff, he did a lot of this calculation based on a number of things. The demands that are currently out there, the AB 356 requirements of non-functional turf that'll eventually become an out or replaced, as well as the golf course watering budget limits. Wanted to make sure that if this option was implemented, could all of that wastewater be reused? We don't, again, want to be in a situation where we've done all these improvements and we still can't use it all. It's going back out to the desert for evaporation. So I'll welcome JC up here to go ahead and walk you through these calculations, just so you understand where
Well,
they all come from.
I mean, really, the issue becomes the coliforms and you wouldn't use any of this water for the greens. That could become an issue, because most of the groundwater permits in the state, or at least in the valley, that the other treatment plants have to do, there's a certain increase of TDS that is allowed in the water that's used for irrigation over what is the concentration of the TDS in the potable water. That's how the rule reads. So there's like a 600 or 800 milligram per liter allowable TDS rise in the water that comes out of the treated effluent over the top of the potable water. So, in some ways that ends up allowing it to be somewhere around 1,200 to 1,400 milligrams per liter of TDS. And I don't know if I think we have a monitor and report requirement on that number, so we could probably monitor what that is, and we should know what the average TDS is of the potable water. That's something SNWA calculate or measures all the time. So I think those are the factors, but this seems like a pretty good, allowable, it seems like a pretty good, alternative to me.
Howard, hey, to answer your question from earlier about the operational costs of the treatment plant, it's about $1 million annually, and that's not including the capital costs.
And that would seem reasonable, Joe. Thank you.
You know, something else I'd like to throw out there too, and I've mentioned this before, is historically, and I know I've been around for a long time, but the problem with the water at the sewage plant has always been the salt, primarily for reuse. It's way too salty. And the reason it's so salty is water softeners. I don't know what the percentage of residents in Boulder City that have water softeners. It's probably pretty high, 50 to 75%, something like that. There are new ways to treat water without the salt that basically will take care of that issue, so it's no longer salty. And it might be worth a study to take a look and see what it would cost to replace everybody's water softener in Boulder City with a new system that would not put salt in the system. At that point, you would have basically a treated water that would be significant and usable on the existing turf that we have. And it would not take much treatment to do that if we could eliminate the salt. And another thing to look at is if we could put roughly that 30 million gallons of water to use every month that we see every month to use, that means that's 30 million gallons we would not have to buy from SNWA, because that would go back on our, so there would be a cost savings there as well. So I think that's something we really ought to study, take a hard look at, and make sure and see if that's possible, to basically clean up the water to the point we no longer have salt in it.
Well, Ned, I think that's a good point. I mean, that's what is the culprit, is the water softeners. But regardless of what you use, I mean, it was brought up in one of our other meetings that I saw, and I've been trying to investigate this, but they said that instead of using sodium chloride, they use potassium chloride as a replacement. Well, potassium still gets measured as a salt, so it doesn't count. And if they went to a reverse osmosis system or an RO system, you're still going to have to capture that. The blowdown from that system still takes total dissolved solids, which is a salt, back into the system. So you're not gaining those. Anytime you soften your water, regardless of how you do it, the waste from that is going to become measured as a salt in the form of total dissolved solids. We're not going to ever get rid of that. That's the problem. You'd have to eliminate softeners is the only way to do that, and you're not going to be able. That'd be such an impact to the city. We get run out of town on a rail.
No, I agree, but I just had heard that there was technologies that basically eliminated that salt problem, and now if that's not the case, then...
Yeah, there's different ways of not using a salt, but it's still going to create a total dissolved solid, which is what salts basically are measured as.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I'm going to bring JC up here to talk about the calculations with the golf courses and parks.
Good afternoon. I'm J.C. Davis. I'm the Enterprise Conservation Manager for the Water Authority and Boulder City resident since 2000. So I'm just going to walk you through a sequence of slides because knowing the total volume of water is one thing. Knowing how much you have available and how much you need in a given month is actually more important, because sometimes it's possible to have less reclaimed water available than you need, and a lot of times it's available to have more than you need. So I'm going to walk through the analysis that I did. You can't, the city was kind enough to share 2021 data, and so I use that as the basis, but then you have to make some adjustments for future state. For instance, looking at where the two golf courses are versus the 4.0 acre foot per landscapable acre target that they intend to get to, looking at city property compliance with AB 356, the non-functional turf law, and anticipating what the trimming might be on some of those other areas in order to accommodate that, and that obviously has an impact on water consumption. So that's what I've done here. Okay, so what you're looking at now is Muni. You're looking at Muni projected to what its irrigation is likely to look like at 4 acre-feet per landscapable acre. So we're going to presume, for the sake of this discussion, that it gets to the target value from where it is right now. As you can see, very little usage in the winter, and that's because the strategy they've utilized to get to that is not overseeding during the winter. And so, given the irrigation requirements that time of year, you were able to change proportionately how much water was used, per acre, and we know the total number of square feet of turf and all that sort of thing. So you're looking at a similar map for Boulder Creek. Boulder Creek is a little different in terms of the strategies they're going to utilize to meet 4.0 acre-foot per acre target. Because if any of you play, you know that Boulder Creek already uses warm season varieties, and so there's very little irrigation done there in the winter, but they're still keeping the greens alive and that sort of thing. So then we looked at Veterans Memorial Park. What we presumed there was essentially a linear reduction in water use based on the anticipated reductions from AB 356. Not a lot of changes, but there is some trimming around the edges to be done at that park, where streetscapes, that sort of thing. So that's what your pattern looks like there. And then finally, Veterans Cemetery, same rule applies as in the park. We just looked at it and said proportionately how much water is used in each month as a function of the overall annual percentage and reduced it accordingly. So when you put all that together, that's essentially what your consumption curve looks like for those 4 properties. And then you look at, okay, well, what's our available effluent volume that we could use for irrigation by month? And so as you can see, in the winter months, you actually have more effluent than you need for those properties. And in the summer months, you can use it all, and you'll need to supplement that with raw water, potable water, one of those other sources in order to meet your actual irrigation needs. And so just those 4 properties get you to a little over 83% of all of your effluent that's available based on the figures that we got. And so then you say...
I'm sorry, really quick.
No, go ahead.
On that one. So 83%, is that what if we have the reservoir, then we have 83% because we can levelize some of that out? Because right now that I don't see that it's anywhere near 83% in the major months. If I'm looking at the green and the blue.
So let me explain that a little differently then. So overall, over the course of a year, with some months you're able to use 100% of your effluent, some months you're not able to use 100% of your effluent. Over the course of the year, just for these 4 properties alone, you're looking at about 83% of utilization of your total volume available in a given month. Now, based on the engineering solution that DOA discussed, where you actually replace the raw water irrigation line with some combination of your treated effluent and a supplemental source, because you have so many other properties, both turf-laden and drip irrigated in the Boulder City portfolio, if you will, you'll get to 100% readily. So this option does allow you to use all of your reclaimed water every month. You just need to understand that you're going to have to supplement it about 8 months out of the year because there's not enough reclaimed water to meet the needs. Any questions on that part before I send it back?
What's the capacity of that storage reservoir? And how much of that is utilized? In other words, could we pump water up into that storage reservoir and have kind of reserve capacity?
Yeah, the Black Mountain Reservoir, I believe, is about a 2 million gallon capacity. Right now, it gets filled with raw water from SNWA. And then from there, Boulder City takes it throughout the system to irrigate everything. We would still have the ability to deliver raw water to that reservoir in the times that you are in the warmer months. For example, you're not producing enough wastewater effluent to be able to meet the irrigation needs in this community. So we would add additional raw water to that reservoir so that you have constantly the volume necessary. That reservoir is what is the engineered solution, if you will, of being able to level out your needs throughout the year. Because
Right, 'cause
initially,
I-
yeah, go ahead.
No, that's fine, I'm listening.
10, oh, okay, sorry, 10 million gallon reservoir, Joe's correcting me on that one. So yeah, that would store the treated wastewater, and it would just draw down as needed. And only when you're at a point where you don't have enough in there to meet your irrigation demands would SNWA then deliver raw water.
What's the storage capacity of that reservoir?
10 million gallons.
Well, then that's, we could just keep on pumping water up there all the time, because our effluent flow is really consistent. I mean, there's no variation, there's hardly any variation in our wastewater flow month to month.
True. It's
So
never been a question about what's generated from the wastewater treatment plant.
So-
It's the demands that we need to level out.
So basically, you almost got 10 months of storage capacity there of effluent, treated effluent.
Yep.
So that could be, that seems like a pretty, I mean, this is getting down into the weeds of how to operate the dang thing, but that's got a lot of other possibilities, if you can get return flow credits for irrigation.
It's not a return flow credit scenario. What it is it basically extends the resource by you not demanding more water out of the lake
Correct.
for your irrigation needs.
Yeah,
Yes.
so Boulder
We're
City,
talking,
You get almost an additional use out of each gallon of
Yeah.
water.
yeah,
It's,
so Boulder City and the SNWA both benefit.
yes, yes.
yeah.
I shook my head only a little bit because we technically lose water on the raw water sales, but that's okay.
No,
But from a
that's-
community
that's-
standpoint, yes.
But with 10 million gallons of capacity there, that gives us a lot of flexibility.
Yes.
This is, we need to start, this is a good alternative, I think.
Now, the one thing, though, I want to clarify is if I understanding correctly, it depending on the plant and how everything, and the solid, not the solids, but the salt and everything, if I understood correctly, there was a option to blend the, hopefully, raw water and the effluent to reduce the salts and then put it in. So you wouldn't just be using only effluent, you'd be using a mixture. I thought I was understanding that as
And
one
we
of the
could,
options.
that's true, that's true, but we probably have some current data on that, or we could get some current data on those salt pot pieces too.
Right,
Or we'd have to ask the test to be done at the lab we go to. So,
right.
Anyway,
The option to add raw water to the system would be in the time periods where you're not going to generate enough effluent to meet your needs, which are
Right.
generally going to be your peak summer months.
Okay, so then it'd
but
be,
the other part is, well, I've lost my thought here. But anyway, go on. There was another thought I had in here. Oh, the TDS, from my understanding, is in City of Henderson, is where I've got this information from. The golf courses that use reclaimed water there only use their reclaimed water on their fairways. They do not use it on the greens, because that's where the TDS impact takes place, is on the grass that's used for the greens. So that's how the city of, so that basically at City of Henderson, all the golf courses that are reclaimed wastewater only use it on fairways, and then they have a separate potable connection for watering their greens. So that's something
That's been the case. That's been the case throughout the Las Vegas Valley. I do want to make a point of clarification, though. Right now, there are no golf courses in the Las Vegas Valley that are receiving recycled water anymore. All of the recycled water treatment plants in the Las Vegas Valley, Henderson, and as well as City of Las Vegas and Clark County Water Reclamation District's plants have all been mothballed. So I just want to clarify that. So
But
everybody at
all
this
of-
point is now receiving potable water for all of their
All of-
golf course use.
all of Henderson's wastewater golf courses are not on reclaimed water?
No, no longer anymore. They've shut down their treatment plant.
Well, no. I don't think that's true.
No, it is. It is. It's been a couple years now. And I don't know the reasons why, but it is shut down. So I just want to clarify that right now.
Well, no. The city of Henderson's reclaimed water comes from all of it. The golf courses in the city of Henderson are required to use reclaimed water.
Those, when the reclaimed water treatment plant was up and operating, it's not right now. So they're being supplemented by potable water.
There's a plant out, Henderson has a plant out on West Henderson that treats, that's all they do is treat wastewater that goes to the golf courses. There's 8 different golf courses out there that use it. And then there's one over on the east side of town that uses it from the main treatment plant.
Okay.
Black Mountain does not use golf water anymore, nor does the Boulder City Parkway. They do not irrigate there anymore, but that's the only 2 that shut down in Henderson.
Well, Howard, what we can do on that is if this becomes a viable option, then we can look at that more closely.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just make
This
sure
is
we
still good.
understand
This
the
is
facts
still a good
more.
option. Yeah.
So, but thank you. Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Howard. I was just
No,
trying
no,
to
that's
move forward
fine.
on that.
We were getting a different world anyway, so.
So, can we go back to the direct reuse, not the major slide again? And just go through that really quick,
This one?
the one before that. So I guess I just wanted to go through really quick, if that's okay,
Sure.
I think to sort of point out some of the things. Again, number one, I guess we're in good shape. Number two, that's, we see that is pretty expensive, for the Henderson. Now, we're gonna offset it, of course, but at least we know that we probably have similar costs. Ours, if I'm understanding correctly, would be more expensive, but we still have a lot of advantages, I believe. Requires wastewater treatment plant. So this would most likely be would this be a replacement, I would probably assume? Or
I
is
don't
that what
believe it
this
will be a replacement, but it would be an augmentation to the current process that's there. So and that unfortunately would take a little more of a deep dive from an engineering. We don't do wastewater treatment, so we would need to hire an engineering firm that does that, and they would do a more of a fine-tuned scoping of what exactly is necessary within the treatment plant. But we know that what's currently happening needs to be augmented to meet the requirements to be able to deliver to golf courses and parks.
Okay, so then I guess I'll just wait at the end and ask for the overall cost instead of trying. unless
Oh,
you got
I mean, I can tell
estimated.
you from a very preliminary, again, this is very preliminary, this cost option was about, I think it was 42 million,
This is 42 for the overall? Okay.
yes.
That's all the new lines and everything, okay. So, and then, see, involves repurposing existing raw water line, blending potable, I guess that's where I was getting at my question earlier. So, this is a proposed, it doesn't have to be repurposed. This was just saying that we could repurpose the raw line, but we wouldn't have to in this case.
No, you would repurpose the raw water line in this case. This actually made this option the only option that we're able to find a way to reuse the water 100%, as well as not having to dig up all of the roads to add new purple pipe everywhere.
Okay, let me make sure I understand correctly. So we don't have to repurpose the raw water line from Southern Nevada Water Authority. We have to repurpose the raw water line from internally in Boulder City.
From the reservoir would become repurposed, yes.
Right.
So the reservoir and all the downstream raw water lines that are today raw water lines would all become recycled water lines.
So we wouldn't have to blend the potable, we would still have access to the raw.
The access to the raw would be through the reservoir,
Right.
yes. And then the potable part would be a separate meter, just like Howard was talking about in terms of having the greens get potable water and everything else gets the recycled water.
Okay, but that's still sort of, okay, so that's something we'd want to talk about more, just to make understanding, but.
Yeah.
I know, because I guess what I'm trying to clarify, there is talk about repurposing the current raw water line as a backup for the potable water.
So then the line that comes from SNWA to that Black Mountain Reservoir, that line right now is a raw water line. We could turn that into a potable water line to provide redundancy within Boulder City from a drinking water standpoint. Then it would just be, you'd receive potable water blended into that reservoir as opposed to raw water. It'd still go in by an air gap, so it's not directly connected. So if you needed more water in that reservoir to supplement in the warmer months your effluent, you would just be receiving potable water as opposed to be receiving raw water if we repurpose that line. But it gives us that flexibility to do so.
It does, but like, I think the committee would prefer to at least keep looking at the alternative to keep the raw line as much as possible, especially
There's,
if we're blending
there's a
raw.
pro and a con to that,
Yeah,
yes.
yes.
Raw water, yes, it's a different rate, but right now, Boulder City only has a single line for potable water. So if ever we have any outage on that, that's it on the potable water to this community. We don't have two feeds. So if we were to convert the SNWA line that's currently raw to a secondary potable line, then Boulder City no longer receives raw water, only receives potable water, but you have redundancy to this community.
But what has been suggested is that you have it so it can be converted if
Yes,
need be.
if
by
need
putting-
be.
And then you just have raw in it, and then if you need it for emergency, you switch it to potable. If we can't switch it back, then that would be the time. But if
Right.
you could do the proper valves, because that's gonna be, it's 25% increase minimum of between raw and potable, so it's an increase to the budget. There's a lot of issues. So it's another subject, but I think
Yes.
we all wanna keep it in mind that it's not, we definitely wanna look at it more closely before
Sure.
Boulder City.
But that's
does that.
outside of the scope of what we're doing
That's what I was
here.
trying to clarify, because
Yes.
when I saw this, I thought that was automatically taken care of, that it's internal. So I just wanna make sure everybody understands that, that's the
Yes.
internal Boulder City raw water, not the external.
That's correct.
So, thank you for pointing that out.
No problem.
So then you're saying that with the 1.2, the next one, water quality implications and the required, that's the increased cost is the last one. So the water quality implications using treated and additional monitoring, so that would have a cost and stuff to it that we would worry about later if this is a viable.
Correct.
Now, are you saying the increased cost was the 1.2, was that the increased cost, or was that the total cost that you thought would be that?
The annual operating
Yes.
costs, I believe I said 1.7 million,
Oh, I'm
and that's
sorry.
what we're estimating. Now, what I don't know is whether or not that's taking consideration the addition, is that addition to the existing operating cost, which you're saying is roughly $1 million for your treatment plant? On top of that we'd have to take a closer look at. So without knowing what your operating costs are today, this is the all-in operating costs that we're estimating. So I believe there would be some overlap with what
Yes.
you're currently paying on your operating plant now, and then obviously additional in pumping and so forth, and permitting for that.
Because I agree with how, I think, so far, I think most, at least, that we agree that this has, I think for the committee, has a lot of perspective to be a viable option for Boulder City. So just trying to make, so it's a little cheaper, but it's still higher than the 26 million.
Right.
That's allied, so we'd still have to figure out. But again, Boulder City, this would reduce Boulder City's demand for water, so if we have to put into it, we would get a little more out of it, I believe, Boulder City itself
Sure.
than the other one.
Sure.
So that's another something to consider.
Yeah, and you're not having to do any sort of an interlocal agreement with City of Henderson.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think this one has a lot of benefits to it, so, thank you. Anybody else on this? Again, thank you for your time. This is helping a
Oh,
lot.
I got a question.
Sure.
I must have missed something. Somewhere in your explanations of everything, you said they closed down all the water treatment plants in the valley.
Yes.
So where are we sending our water if we're closing down all the water treatment plants, if we send it over to Henderson? I'm missing.
No,
I'm missing.
I'm
I got
sorry.
disconnected there.
I don't
somewhere.
mean the wastewater treatment plant. I mean the recycled water plant. They have a
Thank you.
separate plant for recycled water only.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I apologize.
The other question I had is, if we used Henderson in this case,
Sure.
over time, from past experience, permitting becomes more difficult to go back to. So is there any kind of reparations we would get if Henderson could not fulfill their needs at any given time? For example, if we had to discharge differently, is there anything in the works that would say, okay, Henderson will pay any fines that we have, or any of those kind of things, if they cannot?
If they can't receive your flows. That's a very, very good point.
Because we're going to tie our hands.
Sure, absolutely.
And over time, that permitting of allowing us to do it as we're doing now will go away.
Sure, yeah. That's absolutely excellent point, and I know that we would probably have to make sure that we negotiate that into any sort of agreement that goes in between the two agencies.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions on this one before I go on to the alternative three?
Just another comment. I just checked with the city of Henderson. They're irrigating, 9 different golf courses.
With recycled water?
Yep.
Interesting. That's not what I had heard. All right.
I know that, Las Vegas shut down one of their treatment plants.
Both of the
So-
treatment plants in both City of Las Vegas and Clark County Water Rec are both shut down.
Yeah, they did shut down their reclaim plant, that's true. So, but
Interesting.
Henderson is still irrigating.
So they must have multiple recycled water treatment plants in Henderson.
Yeah, the Southwest Water Reclamation Plant over on St. Rose is the one that supplies all the reclaimed water now. Well, actually, both plants do, so. All right, just a comment.
Okay. All right, moving on to alternative three. Oops. Let me get to the slide. Okay, alternative three. And this is a result actually of our staff working closely with Boulder City staff. And Boulder City actually gets credit for bringing this idea up. This was actually a last minute what if, and we looked at it and we said, wait a minute, this is very viable. So this would be a return flow credit scenario. This would be returning the wastewater directly back to Lake Mead, but not through City of Henderson. This would actually utilize existing infrastructure within City of Boulder City. This one alternative provides 100% utilization of the treated effluent, requires no operating agreement with City of Henderson to treat the returned wastewater, requires wastewater treatment plant upgrade replacement to improve the effluent quality of the release. It may involve significant environmental permitting, but that's something that SNWA would navigate and achieve for that. Increased operating costs as opposed, knowing that, like we talked with the last one, you have to still increase the ability and the clarity of the water that you're producing because it's being returned directly back to Lake Mead. It will require a special dispensation from Bureau of Reclamation to receive the return flow credits, but we have that ability to do, so we would just get another meter added at this point, essentially. And it allows potential repurposing of the existing raw water distribution network as an entire second potable water system backup. So let me show you a picture of what that looks like. The line that is in kind of the yellow color is the old raw water line that feeds Boulder City. And that line itself is old, probably not in the best condition. So the scope of this would include lining the existing pipeline out there, which is over 40,000 feet of it. It would include wastewater treatment pipe to go back up to that point of connection, and as well as a treatment plant and pumping station. What this does is this allows Boulder City to return Boulder City's wastewater, treated wastewater, back to Lake Mead in their own backyard in their control, 100%. So what this does is it takes away any sort of having to deal with the total dissolved solids at the parks and golf courses. You're still using raw or potable water, depending on what your choice is here. And 100% of your indoor water is being recycled for return flow credits. So you go from 100% consumptive use to now 100% recycled.
So on this here, I think just to make sure everybody's clear, so that's what we used to get from the dam itself. So
Yes.
this would be pumping it
Back.
back to the dam, not actually to, some people would probably think it's going back to Lake Mead, near the beach. Because that would be just, I think the picture shows it, but just to
Yeah.
make sure everybody's obvious, this is the old line that is somewhat, probably I've heard like a sieve, but it can be repurposed
slip line
easier
it.
than you would think, so.
Absolutely.
So that's good, that's a positive.
Yeah.
The other thing is I think the one thing that would be nice to look at is if there's any feasible way that we put another treatment plant in the Hemingway Valley, then we wouldn't have to pump the water. We could use the gravity in the Hemingway Valley to take their water down. So we wouldn't pump it up from the Hemingway to one treatment plant and then pump it back again.
Understand.
That would be a nice aspect. We would have to pump one of it up, but not both ways. So that would be, I think, would be an alternative to this would be, or to add it is what it would be to make either a small plant in each side, one on what currently location and one in the Hemingway Valley.
I understand.
And that's a possibility to look at. But I think this, so again, I think what's the cost of this one?
This one actually is the least expensive.
That would sort of imagine.
It's about 36 million.
36.
Okay, and I need to add caution to that because when's the last time that line was surveyed?
Well, I'm not really sure. We're assuming it's a sieve. Yeah.
Well, my point is sieves, I've been through the lining, piping before. They require a certain amount of structural integrity in order to utilize it. You just can't slip it through there.
Sure,
And you may end up replacing the whole damn pipe.
right, we do have a couple alternatives with respect to slip lining, some of them strictly for structural, some of them not for structural. So we would evaluate this and choose the one that's appropriate.
But that also could really make a big impact on cost.
Yes, but still being the biggest cost associated with these are usually the excavation and staging and all of that, which we won't have to do by utilizing the existing alignment that's out there. As long as the pipe's not crushed, we are good.
Gotcha.
So
Thank
slip lining still comes in quite a bit cheaper either way. There is another slight alternative to this. If we don't want to go directly all the way back to Hoover Dam, you can kind of come back just a little bit short of that and do an injection well. And that still gives us return flow credits because then it's influencing Lake Mead as well. So depending on what it looks like, sometimes the permitting requirements for surface discharge is greater. Whereas if we are injecting directly back into the ground close to the source, then we're not having to comply with surface discharge requirements because you have an environmental buffer in there. You're putting it back into the ground where it gets absorbed back into lake. So there are alternatives within this, but I do have to really seriously commend the Boulder City staff. We had fantastic meetings with everybody involved, and them coming up with this idea we had not even considered. So when we went back and looked at it, we said, wow, this actually did come out to be a very viable option. This does, as I say, not change anything to your end users in terms of golf courses or parks having to do any changes to the way they receive water or how they drain the water on their property as a result of the high solids. This would still keep them in raw water or potable if they wanted to be able to deliver water to those as they have been this whole time.
So is the Bureau on board with this? Because would they put it into the river, or would they actually be able to put it back into the lake? Because they'd have to change some piping down there probably to do that.
Right. So right now, the Bureau, we have meters in different locations, so they're willing to give us a meter for counting towards that return flow credit. Every gallon we send back, we get another gallon that's benefiting the community. Whether it's at the well, if we do an injection, or back at the Hoover Dam location, we can pick a spot that's necessary. Our preference being upstream of the dam, because we still want to keep the elevation of the lake up. Every drop is better.
But to Ned's point, is it going into the lake? If it goes back to the Hoover Dam, does it go into the lake or does it go into the Colorado River?
It's going into the lake.
Well,
Where the line
the
starts
tree,
is actually down at the river level.
Yeah.
but regardless, if it goes back into the lake, the treatment quality, the cost of that to get to that treatment level, if it goes into the lake, is going to be a lot more expensive than what it is right now.
Right, which is why the injection well gets you out of that.
The injection well is a great idea,
Yeah,
but the going into the Lake Mead, we'd have to treat for ammonium
surface
nitrogen,
water. Yeah,
get our ammonium levels down to a very low quality. The phosphorus concentrations will have to go to a very low quality, a very low level. And we'd have to completely change the treatment process to achieve those levels of treatment.
right, which is why the injection well gives you Mother Nature's filtration.
Yeah, the injection wells is a great idea, but put it back into the lake is, your costs are going to go up. You haven't factored those costs in this at all. That has not even been considered. You haven't even, if you said there was no increase in cost or it was less, that's totally wrong.
No,
But-
Howard, it is saying that
It's
it's
the
an
least
increased-
expensive cost.
It is, there is an increased operating cost, because you do have to
It
have.
would or,
Yeah.
would or would not?
No,
It
there
would.
would be
It
an
would be an
increase in
increase.
operating costs. You still have to pump it up to that elevation, and then you do have to do additional treatment
Well, no,
within your,
plus if you're gonna put it into the lake, and that, it has to meet a really high effluent quality.
that's correct.
It's gonna have to meet an effluent quality that is almost as good as drinking water.
Right, and that's why the injection well gets you that nice in between. You don't have to do as much in the treatment, enough to be able to put it into there, gets you the natural environmental buffer to do the rest of the treatment for you, while still getting a return flow credits for all of the wastewater from this community.
It sounds to me like you have some good alternatives, but the environmental, the discharge limits, there has a lot more investigations that need to be taking place here. Because I think the injection well is certainly a good thing, but, you know, how long are those available or viable? How long can we use those? What's the years? You know, we have to know all these things, but,
Sure,
you know, come up in additional studies, I'm sure. But, yeah, going back into, in fact, the other alternative could be too, what is the water quality that needs to go into the Colorado River? That may be different enough. A change of the discharge point could mean a significant change in the water quality that has to go out there as well.
right.
So that's,
The type of permitting that's needed for surface water discharge is significantly more than an injection well. But all of that,
Well-
again, if this is the option that the city of Boulder City chooses, would be vetted out, so we'd have that option
Well-
laid out.
the point is that to go into the lake, you're gonna have to do nutrient removal. That's gonna be, and that's very expensive. To ask Chesapeake Bay, anybody in the Chesapeake Bay or anybody that discharges in the Lake Mead, what those costs are. And it includes changing completely the process, I said that already.
Right,
If it would go in Colorado River, the impact to the river, because now it's not a lake, it's now a river, a moving body of water,
right,
that if those water quality issues change which would not require nutrient removal, that's a viable alternative as well,
right.
but we'd have to find out what those are to determine what type of treatment capacities we'd have to have.
And that would absolutely be detailed out in the very detailed scope once we have a selection on one of the choices, whichever one the city decides to move in. But you're absolutely correct, Howard.
Within the distance from the lake or river where it would qualify for the return credits, are there more than one injectable reservoirs there, or is it just one? In other words, I just asked if there are more than one place that we can inject.
Oh,
Have the option.
have multiple injection wells?
Or just so we have other options.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all of those things can be vetted out. We can take a look at exactly what the capacity of an injection well is. If it turns out we need 2 of them, that's what happens. This is kind of common practice within areas in Arizona. California is currently doing this with one of their areas in Los Angeles, where they're going to be returning their treated wastewater to in-ground injection wells. So it's something that's already regularly done elsewhere. In this particular case, it would still get us that return flow credit.
So if we do it down here in the Hemingway Valley, that would be a suitable location, even though we're not in the same water basin as the Las Vegas Valley.
That's correct. We have return flow credit, for example, we have return flow credit meter out in Laughlin. And
Oh, really?
so SNWA can have return flow credit meters in multiple locations. So that part's not the concern. We just want to be able to get it back so we can say we are returning it.
How about the dry lake, the El Dorado Valley?
The dry lake, unfortunately, is not in any way connected to Colorado River, and that basin area is not in any way under influence of the river.
Okay.
The only other problem that I can see that this poses is our concern with our expansion of our community. To me, this leads up, the El Dorado Valley development, it leads up to them going, hey, we don't have to pump our wastewater anymore over the hill to go to Henderson. We can just let good old Boulder City take that water and take care of it. So
So,
that's an impact that we have to consider, because anything across the 93 or the 95 there is always caused a lot of consternation in our community.
sure.
And I'll bet you a lot of money that if we have that option to go into to take our water that way, that El Dorado Valley is going to gain a lot of attention. They say, well, we can just connect to Boulder City.
So El Dorado Valley's development plan was negotiated with the city of Henderson. Right now, their development plan has them doing 4 lift stations and pipeline to get it back up over and into city of Henderson. If this option was selected, and at some point in time down the line in the future, the city of Boulder City wants on its own to negotiate the opportunity to make money from El Dorado Valley, that is your choice and your choice alone. But it has nothing to do with the selection we're looking at.
Well, I don't care how good how many negotiations are in the city of Henderson. If a developer comes in and it comes down to cost, they're gonna try to convince somebody to take it to Boulder City.
Well, I know that in my communication with the city of Henderson, their development agreement with El Dorado Valley's developer has them doing everything, all the infrastructure to get up and over the hill into city of Henderson's jurisdiction, not in any way touching Boulder City.
So it looks like, I think probably is a good point to move on, because there's a lot of alternatives
Yeah.
here. And I think, so if this is picked, because are you going to try to narrow it down to one, or are you willing to narrow it down to two to sort of really fine tune them?
The idea really is to kind of get direction on one of them from the city of Boulder City, and whatever it takes to further investigate is fine, but the sooner the better. We're kind of, obviously, in a bit of dire
Look-
needs.
Larry, typically three alternatives and getting some pretty good numbers on each one of those would help us make a better decision.
Well, I think two minimally, because what I'm hearing, just to make sure you heard what I thought I heard, is they want to narrow it down to one.
Well, it's
Yeah,
just to be able to
agree,
dive
but-
into an actual true design.
Yeah.
But, they got 3 alternatives here already. I think they ought to cost out all 3 of them.
Well, there's a fourth one still, but I'm not sure that, so it
Well-
depends on how viable that one is.
I mean, you're gonna have to have, we don't have, there's not enough information here to make that decision. There's too many missing components of all of these to make any kind of decision on that. They're great ideas, but there's no cost involved. They've eyeballed all the costs, and that's not good information for us to make any kind of decision at this point.
Well, I think the next thing is, so we'll see how much we need an alternate for, and then I think that was pretty much it. Then I think we
Right.
can do is just ask for the next steps. So, Howard, let's do that at the end and make sure that we can, because I agree with what you're saying, but we just need to see what we can do to expedite today.
I understand. No, I agree. Go on.
Okay, thank you, but I greatly appreciate your input. So, I guess we can quickly go through, is any other questions on 3? Okay, you want to quickly go through 4?
Okay, and 4, this is sort of kind of teeing up with that last piece that I mentioned regarding if the Boulder City wants in any way to be able to make additional money to offset their own operation costs. They certainly have the ability, if they want to negotiate something with the city of Henderson, but on the other side. This one looks at, city of Henderson obviously has El Dorado Valley. They have to do their 4 lift stations and pipe to get up over the hill to where they are returning their wastewater to city of Henderson. This would involve if city of Boulder City wanted to. Now, keep in mind, SNWA would not build the developer's piece. SNWA would only build city of Boulder City's piece. But if Boulder City and Henderson wanted to talk and negotiate whatever it is they want to negotiate, if they want to say, yeah, we're willing to receive the wastewater from El Dorado Valley for just the screening of the solids and then return it all back to Boulder City along with everything, Henderson's willing to waive operational costs, so forth and so on, because it saves money for essentially both parties. You're doing the initial treatment and receiving their wastewater flows, sending it up over the hill into Henderson, and then Henderson takes it from there. You would not then be expected to pay operating costs because you're taking their customers' wastewater and treating it for them, so it's kind of a quid pro quo, So this particular option, we only threw this out because this was one that Henderson had suggested. What if this is an option that Boulder City wants to do? And I know I said to City Council that I was not going to propose anything that benefits El Dorado Valley for this community, but this is something that if you want to look at it, again, the developer's piece is the developer's expense, nothing to do with SNWA. And if you look at the drawing, it's really no different than what was already proposed in the first alternative. The only difference is that kind of fuchsia colored line would be the developer's expense of getting their wastewater to your treatment plant. And then beyond that, the benefit in this situation then becomes your operating expense negotiation with Henderson. So that's really the only reason why I bring this up. It's kind of a option 1A, if you will.
Yeah, so it's still 46 million, but possibly could be offset with El Dorado, but then
That's correct.
how much is that benefit, that could actually, as could hurt Boulder City as much as help, so with the interaction.
Sure.
So
Again, I threw this out only because obviously Henderson said, well, what if this? And if that is something that Boulder City wants to explore, we'll absolutely explore it. It's not really necessarily a separate alternative, as it is kind of a bonus if you chose to, at the future, negotiate something regarding El Dorado Valley to alternative 1. So in reality, there's really 3 alternatives sitting here before you. It's just this last one allows Boulder City to kind of be in control of their own destiny if they choose to want to allow El Dorado Valley to be served by them.
Do I have a question? Have you, for when you've been talking with the city of Henderson, have you been talking to wastewater operations, or have you been just talking to the planning department?
Planning, wastewater operations a little bit, and then also the utility director.
Yeah, I think you need to get wastewater operations involved a little bit more too, but that's just my thought. Okay, thank you.
And that's the end of it.
So-
Any other?
I guess the major question, and then it depends if we have to go back again, is the, what are the next steps for SNWA?
So as I had committed to with the city council several months back, was we would go in, take a look at what are the viable options to be able to reuse, return wastewater from Boulder City. And with these options laid out, the next step really is to go to city council, I would imagine probably February, March if need be, to present these with some of the preliminary costs, get a feel for what the preference is, and then at that time is when we go out for proposals for an engineer to do an actual true design.
So you're hoping to get a commitment by the council somewhere by March or April?
Preferably March at the latest, if possible.
'Cause you said February or March, and
Yeah,
I'm just
I would
giving them
I
time to
mean-
reply.
We were on schedule to be presenting to city council in February, and then asked by the utility advisory committee to give you guys a briefing on what we're moving forward with, what we found so far, so that's why I'm here today. So February is when we were planning to go to the city council.
Well, we're understanding, so that's what we're trying to do, is not step on anything, but we're an advisory role, we're an advisory
Understand.
committee, so we're hoping that we can get facts to help advise the council. And so, and this is a presentation only, this is not a for action
Correct.
item, so we cannot even do a motion today to say what we feel, we can discuss things. So that's the thing, what I'm hearing from Howard, and I'm going to see if we can get the rest, we can at least discuss our feelings here, our advisory role, is that the next step, it seems a little fast and I'm not sure where we're gonna fit back in, if we even fit back in, to help advise the council. And I agree with Howard, to try to trim this down to 1, I'd like to see, I would preferably, and I think, see more facts on at least item alternate 2 and 3, because those seem to be, for Boulder City, seem to be a better alternative. But
Sure.
to narrow it down to 2 or 3 is a little hard, I would think,
Sure.
without more facts.
So if you want to, between Joe, get me the list of whatever your questions or facts are that you're looking for, we can provide that back to you if you want. Ultimately, obviously, in the worst drought in history, and we're not seeing this get any better. And as I stand here before you today, I mean, the 7 basin states are negotiating with the feds on exactly what all they're cutting, and they're coming after everybody's water. So for us, every drop that we're able to return gives us a stronger position to fight against cutting us. So we're here today because we have money in the budget and we're willing to move forward in one of these options. At the time that we had done this originally, it was a wastewater return option, so that was the estimate that we had at that time. We want to be able to extend our resource and stop the consumptive use within this city. So when I presented in front of the city council, I promised that I'd come back to them with the alternatives for their decision. So if you have additional questions or need additional facts, absolutely, please, through Joe. We communicate regularly, and we will get you any answers you need, even if it's just via email. I mean, we'll get you everything you need so that you can properly advise council.
Yeah, because I guess the one thing is do you expect to have the question about the 26 compared to the 46 million, or like for alternative 2, the additional 10 million, if that's the 36 million for alternate 3, for instance, sorry, I think I said 2, for alternate 3 was 36 million. Is that something that
The
might be?
question that really needs to be asked is, if your selection is for recycled water, are we willing to pay for that whole amount, or are we only willing to pay the 26 million that was originally budgeted for wastewater return? That's really the question that needs to be answered. If your option is, say, for example, option number 3, that's the cost of wastewater return, we're moving forward with it.
So you're gonna do whatever it takes, you would cover the whole amount?
Yes,
Okay.
because that was what was originally the scope in our budgeting, was for wastewater return. If the city of Boulder City would prefer it to be a recycled water use, then our 26 million is what we originally budgeted for, and that's probably all that you would see towards that project.
Okay, well, that's good to understand. I'm not sure I totally understood that before, so,
That's okay.
okay.
Larry, I still don't, I think we need to look at all three alternatives. The last one, alternative 4, is something that is like she mentioned, that's on our behalf. We'd have to take care of that ourselves. But with the 3 alternatives that they presented are 3 things that need to be investigated to marry in the costs. I mean, we're talking, what it comes down to us is, what is the cost going to be, and how can we make a decision without any hard numbers that, we can make that recommendation on.
And I don't have a problem sending you those exact exhibit slides with our preliminary cost estimate on it. I can do that. But the point of coming to this committee was to advise you on the feasibility, not necessarily discussing the costs, because the costs will change based on which particular option we get into and as we start a true design. As I've mentioned before, we are not wastewater treatment people, so getting a real true estimate is going to require hiring an engineer to do that, and we're not going to hire an engineer to do 3 designs.
Yeah, no, I mean, but I think a preliminary report needs to come down with some costs here, because there's no way we could, with what's been presented today, we need to have some hardcore costs to make this decision.
Well, the one thing,
And-
Howard, so if we went,
One other point
Sorry.
that I'd like to make is, and I think that this has been expressed in our past meetings amongst the UAC, and Ned being the real guy that really promoted this and made me think of this, is that, the city of Boulder City, we do use a lot of water per capita. We do that. But we're the only one in the valley that has concerned about growth. And if everybody else is expanding and growing communities and, putting in multi-million-dollar, expansions of properties and development, we have to start curtailing that as well. And, we're already there, and no one else is following that lead. Yes, we do use a lot more water than some, but you know what? If other people are expanding, it doesn't matter if you're using 100 gallons per person a day or 80 gallons per person per day. If you keep on expanding communities without any growth restrictions, we might as well just pack it up. And I think somebody needs to take a stance on that as well.
Understand. However, keep in mind, in even just the last 3 years, The valley has grown by over 45,000 new customers, new accounts, new services and homes and so forth, and we've reduced our water use by over 12%. Our gallon per capita per day has dropped. That shows you that we can grow smart. We are not in the business of wasting our water. We have some of the strictest requirements put on these new developments, even negotiating even stricter requirements every single day to make sure that if they are growing without wasting our water. So, I mean, I understand and I appreciate you saying that. We don't have the ability to stop growth. We have only the responsibility to put in place the requirements that are necessary to control the way water is used and make sure that it's getting back. Some of the most recent rules that we've put into place are so strict, stricter anywhere in the country, to make sure that we are not increasing our gallon per capita per day amount. We are only driving it down. I understand that Boulder City is not growing, and that's your choice as a city, absolutely. We're here to drive your gallon per capita per day down.
But you're talking about us, you're asking us to save 1 million gallons. 1 million gallons of water. You're asking us to save 1 million gallons of water. City of Henderson discharges somewhere close to 20 million gallons a day. The Clark County does about 100 million gallons a day, and Las Vegas does about 60 million gallons a day, and North Las Vegas does about 18 million gallons a day. So, you know, it's a drop in the bucket here, and you're asking us to make these concessions, which is great. Every dollar, every gallon counts. But, you know, if you keep on expanding, it's gonna fall on deaf ears, and especially if we have to take to our citizens a cost increase to treat that water, to treat that 1 million gallons of water, and there's actually 2 million gallons, and 2.5 million is what we have to design for. That's going to be an impact.
The one thing that was brought up, though, is if we're looking at alternative, because I'm not, is there any way to give us a little bit more information on these without doing engineering on all three? Because if there isn't for all three, 2 and 3, at least a good portion of the cost is a new plant.
Sure.
And so if you got an engineering estimate on a new plant, or even if we could put 2 plants in on alternate 3, then that would be something that would possibly not be that much of an increased cost to you. If anything, we could still look at least 2 alternatives instead of saying we're going to put all our eggs in one basket. Because that's the thing. I understand the need for speed. I understand
Right.
that. But I also understand that going from 4 alternatives or even 3 down to 1 with the information we currently have is, I agree with Howard, is difficult. And so it'd be better to at least have at least 2 alternatives that we could compare instead of just 1, by saying we're gonna engineer that. Sorry, Howard.
Understand, yeah.
We've already, she's presented 3 good alternatives. I mean, right now, I think we need to have capital costs for each one and O&M costs for each one, because we're gonna have to absorb the O&M costs unless SNWA wants to pay for our O&M costs. And again, compare that to our existing operation.
Yeah, so I guess we can look at, okay, so you're do we know what, council meeting you were looking at in February?
Probably the 2nd,
Okay, because we're supposed to meet on the 1st.
right?
If we were able to have additional information at our meeting on the 1st, which is a little bit more than 2 weeks away. So I'm not sure, we could have an additional discussion, but I'm not sure we could get that much additional information from Southern Nevada Water Authority.
Well, aside from the capital costs as well as the operating costs that have been estimated, additional information that you would be needing to know to properly advise council, if you can get those questions of whatever else you're looking for to Joe as soon as possible, we can dive into those.
Well, I think what Howard and I are saying, so I'm not sure the rest, is I think we would like to at least keep a few more viable options available, because if I'm hearing you right, you're gonna go to the council in February and ask them to pick one option.
Sure.
And so then, that's a big decision with the
Right.
information we have right now. So
Right.
that's what we're saying. So, and I don't know if we can ask the right questions by the February 1st, or then, and we don't, and we're running out of time today to continue on to get that. So I'm not sure how we're going to get the additional information by February 1st.
Well, I can definitely
make it-
get you the slides that have the capital and operating costs estimated. That can be turned into you by the end of today. Beyond that, what else would you need to know? That's what I'm asking.
The dollar amounts are what I would be concerned with.
Okay.
Yeah, I think capital and O&M costs, we have to know those. Because if it, and compare, we're gonna have to compare those to our existing operating facility.
So I guess if we can get the best available costs, then, and include that in any other, maybe additional, include any additional information, background that might not have been in there, then that would be helpful. And I guess then we would, on our last agenda item, we can bring that up again to say it would be for future agenda items. Then for February 1st, we would discuss it again and see what we can come up with before you come to the council
Okay.
in February.
Okay.
Hey, Doug, two questions, or
Sure.
two things. First off, what was it, option 4, which is really like 1B?
Yeah.
There's no way to put that kind of plan into any of the other, on option 2 and 3, where we can recover some of the
The costs?
costs?
Yeah,
over
so,
time?
well, I don't have the slide up if you want to throw the slide back up, but in option 4, what was shown in that fuchsia colored line is basically a lift station and pipeline from El Dorado Valley getting to the Boulder City wastewater treatment plant. If you did, let's just say option 3, which is return it through Hoover Dam, you can still negotiate to have the developer send their wastewater to you, and you now get to bill them for wastewater treatment. They are no longer a customer of City of Henderson, they're your customer.
Yeah, I think that's, to me, we have to keep that in mind. I don't know
Sure.
if there's a way we
It's
can-
it's an opportunity for you to offset your operating costs by making money off of the people that are next door.
We just have to make sure that if we do a treatment plant, the treatment plant's big enough.
Oh, absolutely.
That
No,
would be, that's
Yeah,
what
we
Howard,
looked
that's what
at-
Howard brought up, is that it would be more
Absolutely.
than for Boulder City. So.
Yeah, Henderson gave us their demands for their area based on what the developer is planning to build. And essentially, they'd be adding, I think it's like, you guys have a 1.2 current use, and they'd be adding about 0.4 MGD. So it still fits within your capacity, well below your capacity, actually.
Perfect. The other thing I want to just say, thanks. Really appreciate what you guys put together, as well.
Yes.
I mean, those outside the box kind of thinking is really what's going to save us, if anything's going to save us in the long run.
Absolutely.
It just seems like no matter what, the last two options, generally the costs were about the same compared to the first cost. And I really don't want the city of Boulder City, to be relying on another city.
Sure.
I think we've all experienced those kind of things before.
Absolutely.
So hopefully we can find something within it. But thank you very much for everything you put together. It was fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. And again, if you have any other questions, filter them through Joe. We talk regularly, and I'll be able to get to those immediately for you.
Well, thank you very much for your patience and everything, and hopefully we didn't feel like we were grilling you. That
Nope.
was not the intent.
Nope, it's all right.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, thanks. Okay, well, again, thank you very much for presenting that and taking the time and your patience. I greatly appreciate it. We will close down item number 2 and go to, hopefully we'll be a lot quicker on the rest of it, but I think that's with some good data, and I appreciate it. So we'll go to the item number 3, update on ongoing capital improvement projects provided by staff.
Thank you, Chairman Carr. For this item, this will be handled by our utility engineer, Bill Bruniga.
And I apologize, Joe, I did not give you the opportunity. I think I can reopen, I don't know if but to have any comments on item number 2. Did you need any, did you want any comments? I apologize. On the presentation, I didn't give you a chance to speak up. If you wanted to, I apologize.
No, I think it was well covered.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. So we are still on item number 3 now. Thank you. Hey, Bill.
Good afternoon. Good to see you all. Howard, I look forward to meeting in person. Thank you for your participation as well. This is Bill Bruniga, the new utility engineer with the city working for Joe Stubitz. And he's asked me to give an update on the CIP projects, capital improvement program projects, which are displayed in the tableau. Okay, good. So that's a pretty handy resource for checking on the current projects. Have you all seen that? Do you look at? Okay, good. So what I would like to do is just highlight the few that have had changes since the last time we met. And so there's been some progress on a few of them. So that's what I'd like to highlight right now. Let's start with the feeder 53. That's
I guess we'll wait, wait till it's coming up still. We'll get, so we can see it a little bit easier. And it's-
all right, good.
So I hate to be a broken record, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but the dashboard is still, it's hard to follow. And since you can't print it, the boundaries that it's in makes it a little hard to work with, at least for me anyway.
Yeah, the formatting, the
The
way it's
formatting,
displayed on the screen.
yes, is different, and we can't print it. And so, with the new city manager report, gave us a little. It still has it, but it's limited the information. This has limited information. We can't follow some of the things we used to, and it's so even it has a lot of positive aspects. There's still a lot. I just want to make sure that it is still a little frustrating to follow.
I mean, to speak on that, I believe from the dashboard, you are able to export a CSV file. So,
CSB.
a CSV, which is an Excel file.
Excel file.
So you could do it that way and then kind of make your own view and manipulate it.
Okay, yeah, I'll
how
have
you
to
like.
see that, because all I was able to find was a PDF and images. I have not seen where it can go to Excel. If it's Excel, then it's workable. But with what it was shown when I have clicked on it, that was not done, and the PDF's really a pain in the patoot. And the images are a pain too. Marty?
Well, I was just gonna say, what I decided the other day was I would have to save a file from month to month to month so I can see what is being spent. Because the way it is, I mean, I don't know, I couldn't follow it on that. I had a heck of a time. I talked to Josh, and I'm having a hard time figuring out how to do all the new, finding things on the software in the city. That's just me. I'm a little behind the times, but I thought, okay, well, just save a file on your computer every month, and then you can compare one month to the next. Because even along these lines, am concerned that we will be able to spend all the ARPA money in time, because it seems like it's a very slow process in getting things done and the money spent.
I guess, yeah, if we maybe even just send like Josh did, to show us how to make sure with the package now with the new PrimeGov, something that shows us how to get to the Excel would be. If it's Excel, then yeah, we can work with that. It's just this format's a little difficult.
By the way, is there a tutorial for this? That might be kind of helpful. If somebody could spend some time to make a tutorial, because I'm agreed. If you work with it, it's probably easy. It's probably fine. But for us, it's just go in there once in a while and try to get updated. It's kind of a arduous task.
I can give you a quick tutorial real quick. It's I don't think it's that complicated. So if you just look at the screen real quick, so basically this is all of the projects that we have, the utilities projects. To the left, top left, you got the rollover budget. So basically, right now we're in fiscal year 23. So this is the budget that rolled over from 22. Then to the right of that, you got your FY23 budget. Then you got what was expended in 22. Then you got what was expended in 23 and our current encumbrances for a particular project. And then you got the total available budget. So at the very top, you can select a project, whatever project you want to look at, or you can just come over here to the bottom left and select a account. So if you want to look at all the electric projects, just click electric and it'll update. And now all of this is the status for all of the electric projects. And then if you want to drill down further, you can click on just one project and it'll show you the status of this one project. So this is the financials currently for that one project. And then furthermore, you have a status on what's going on with that project. So for this project, it says 100% of in-house design phase completed, survey and geotech report complete, and the project is out to bid. And the project phase is in design, the priority is 1, and is whether it's a contractor or in-house that's doing the work. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. It also has construction completed, so there's no construction completed on this project currently. And we also got projects that was closed or closed for reallocation. I don't really know what else to say.
Through the fiscal year?
Right at the top.
No. You have like a chart that shows you how it's been spent through the fiscal year. Is it all being spent in one chunk in December, or, is it being spent in $12,000 a month?
You mean like, you want to see like the dates that things were spent?
I think monthly is fine, not an individual date or something of that nature.
Well, I don't think I can add that much level of detail to this particular dashboard because I don't think anything else would fit. But the current encumbrances right now for this particular project is $227. So that's what was spent so far this year is, or that's so far what's being spent, what's encumbered. What was spent so far this year was, 0 for this particular project. And last fiscal year, we had about 16,000 spent. But as far as showing the detail for month to month, that might be a little too much detail, I would think. Like, I don't see the significance of seeing it at that level. This is meant to be a high-level project overview.
Okay, I'm good, okay.
Now, so then, from this point, Josh, do you go back to the refresh on the top, or is there another button to get
No,
back
you don't
to
have to refresh anything. You just click out. You just basically just click out of whatever was selected.
No, okay, go, but I want to get back to the full, to everything again. How do I do that?
Or you can either go here and just select all, or you can deselect. Just deselect that,
How'd you
and then
deselect?
all the account numbers will pop back up, and everything else.
How'd you
will-
deselect?
You just click. So whatever you click, you just
click it again.
Unclick
Okay.
it. Just
Okay.
click it again.
Now, is there a way to do an Excel, to download it as an Excel?
No, this is not downloaded in Excel. You can come up here and download. Well, it'll be a PDF, but downloading in Excel kind of defeats the purpose of a high-level dashboard because you just want to see everything high level. And as far as the detail, all the detail that's on this report is what we think is the detail that should be shown. Anything else, like getting into the weeds of things, is not really something that we were trying to do when we built this. We wanted to keep it very high level. So being able to download it, and this is an interactive dashboard, so even downloading in Excel will kind of defeat the whole purpose of even having the dashboard.
Okay, thank you, Josh.
Yeah, I learned more in just the last 5 minutes than I have in the last 2 meetings. Thank you.
Sorry, Bill.
No, not at all. Actually, the idea of seeing what changed from last time, that's exactly what I wanted to highlight, because I had to do the same thing. So, Josh, I'm going to go through the ones that had changes. And so when I mention the Munis code for each one, just go ahead and highlight it there on the dashboard. Okay, good. Hey, let's take a look at E2101. That's the feeder 53, going down San Felipe, Mendota to Georgia. So we're showing the physical construction completion going up to 80. Last time it was 30. The significance of that is that the contractor on this project is basically done. And that's putting in the conduit and all the equipment.
Okay, so think I missed that too, again, so once you highlight it, then down below, construction completed, it's not in the notes, it's down below, 80%. Okay, yeah, so we're still trying to get used to it, sorry.
Yeah.
I think most of us are missing some of the component, they're not in one location, we have to sort of look around, which is fine, we just need to know where to see it. So, okay, thank you.
So we say the contractor's done, but it says 80%. Well, the remainder is the city staff that's actually going to pull the cable.
But with that one, you've got didn't the note state that you've got something that you're still, you've got a waiver? Not a was it a waiver or was it what, that you have to get done?
We need to do a change order. Part of
Change
this
order.
project was the 4 kV buried cable that's still there. Unfortunately, during the project, it was discovered that it's too shallow buried, so some of it needs to be replaced. So we need a change order with the contractor to do that shallow 4 kV cable. That's the cable that's direct buried.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Anything else tracking on that particular project? Any other questions?
I gotta ask, it popped in my head. You said a change order is needed for that? Wasn't that specified in the original?
They
contract?
didn't know that cable was not deep enough to meet the standards. It needs to be buried deeper to meet the electric standards.
Okay.
And they didn't know that till they got into it. And, oh, this is too shallow.
And to clarify on that change order, it's gonna be done with a different project. It's gonna be done with the Circuit 63 to Sub-3 tie. So there was enough in that budget to do a change order in that project to accomplish this work in the feeder 53 to San Felipe Mendota project.
Yeah, as far as the funding source. Same contractor. Okay, good. Let's take a look at E1909. That's the 4 kV overhead line insulator replacement. The change to highlight there is the prior update said that estimated completion was 6 to 9 months. Well, now we're saying it's 6 months. So that's the change from last time.
I'm sorry, what was that again? What number was that again?
So if I'm using this Munis code in the left column, that's how I'm going to refer to the projects.
2103, okay, sorry, thank you.
So that one is the 1909, is the one I just talked about. Okay, so that was the one change on that one.
Now, that's 6 months for this year's, because we've got next year's, we still have budget for next year, right? In that one, and we're still ongoing, that's not gonna completely finish that project up.
That's one that's going to finish.
Yeah, so for this particular project, this will complete the 4 kV to 12.47 kV conversion. And so there's still additional pole replacements that will be needed. So this project will be completed in its current scope, and then we'll do a new project for pole replacements.
Okay, but there was money in other years for this project, right?
Correct.
I thought it was like 750,000 for another year or two,
That's correct.
24, 25?
Yeah, we are gonna rescope it, and it's likely that funding source would also change. But it's a
Okay,
not to exceed amount for an outside line crew to come and perform work.
Okay, I'm just trying to keep track of the project and understand.
The 750,000 comes from a agreement that we've got with an outside line crew to come and do work. So that's a not to exceed amount for each year.
Okay, and you've just, yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes, and you're right, the pole replacement, that's the one that's got more years ahead.
Yeah, because the pole replacement was combined with this one, that's where I got a little confused too, and now we're gonna separate it out again, if I understand correctly. Okay, thank you.
Next one that had an update, E2009. That was the equipment purchase for buying a new truck. And the progress there is that they were looking at two options of sources, and they called it a boom truck, but it's really a digger truck, where it's got the auger, so it's meant for digging, more so than a boom truck with a lift. They were looking at two choices on that. Well, they made a selection, and so the update is they're working on a PO for the vendor that they picked. And so they arrived at a cost and shipping cost for that one. Roughly $150,000. Okay, good. Next one, let's take a look at E2303. That's the three-phase and commercial meter upgrades. So the prior status on this, we said some meters have been ordered, but now we're saying that all the meters have been ordered and they've started arriving, and our electric guys are testing them in the shop. So that's the progress on that one.
Okay, so going back just to the way the formatting, that's construction completed down below, not cost completions, has nothing to do with cost. Okay, thank you.
The next meter replacement, this goes back to the project that's now has the code number UE183. That's another meter replacement project. Okay, the progress there, the added status on that one is we're saying that the installations of those are expected to be completed during 2023 and 2024.
What exactly was that number again? I apologize.
No problem. UE183.
Okay, okay, so now we have the commercial and we have the finishing up of the electrical meters that are there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Next one, let's look at UE182. That's the Arizona Street feeder. And last time the status said completion possible by the end of calendar year, but they did finish. They finished in December. So that one we're probably going to call closed and not show that.
And so that's the finishing of with the work with the in-house work too. So the in-house.
Yes.
Is that, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. This will be the last one to highlight for today, which is switching over to water. Those were all the electric-related projects. So the one that had a notable status change is W2304. So that was another truck. They're calling it the first response truck, and it's like a work truck that's outfitted for quick response to emergencies or repairs. And the water and the wastewater guys need another truck for that. So that was the premise. The last status on this one, it said project is in planning phase, but actually they got a PO for a truck. So they went ahead and issued that. So that the process of that is they get the truck, they get the chassis. So that's the latest PO, but then it has to be outfitted with all the racks and cabinets. So as soon as that truck arrives, and they don't have a delivery time on that yet, one of those long lead issues, but as soon as we confirm the delivery time of the truck, then we'll schedule getting it outfitted. And that'll be the next PO that we'll talk about for that one. So that truck so far is roughly in the $60,000 range so far. And I don't have information yet on the likely cost of rigging it out for that purpose, for the emergency response truck. And it'll be usable by the water crew and the wastewater crew. Because there's references in here to just water, but it's both. So those were the main highlights off this dashboard.
I had two questions. I guess since we're on water, and I apologize, I thought I had written it down in my notes, but I don't. I think I'd ask about it another time. There was a talk about one project being closed out or moved to a heavyweight conservation plan. It's in the notes on that. Josh, do you know which one that is by chance? Because I didn't see in either the city manager report or this that there was anything with the Hemingway. And I think I wrote it down correctly that it was the Hemingway Conservation Plan.
I think you're talking about W 2102.
2102? Yes,
Yeah, let's take a look.
Yes, that's the line for the national park. Thank you.
So I can give a little brief update on that one. So on the option 3 that we just heard from DOA for SNWA, that is that line. And so we currently serve the Hemingway Parks area as well as the National Park Service for irrigation through that line. That's a line that has thickness issues. To our knowledge, not any collapse issues like that, but we have an agreement with the National Park Service, and we're working with them actively, really to get them to get off of that line, and then we would get off as well and onto potable, and then we would basically abandon that line, not use it, not need to do the PRVs because the pressure is pretty significant at that level. But if it was reused for the return flow purposes, that would be another story. It would be part of that project.
But so to get water to the Park Service, is there, I think in one of the meetings you did mention is another line need to be done, or you would use an existing line to do something differently?
Yeah, they wouldn't need to use another line. They just wouldn't be able to use non-potable water. They'd use the existing potable tap
Okay.
off our potable feed, which is a 36-inch concrete encased line that serves the community.
Oh, okay. So that's what you're currently working on, a connection to that.
They have a connection to that. They just don't have their own cross connections from potable to non-potable. So they're working on that, so then they can get off really this line, because we have an agreement where we would do cost sharing based on the replacements of it. And so it's, for us to replace that line ourselves just for this limited irrigation purpose that we use it for, it's more cost advantage for us to abandon it and just convert to potable. It also opens the door for other possibilities for it to be used for this return flow project.
Right, but I guess, is there a Hemingway, is there another project? Because that's what I guess I'm just trying to make
So
sure.
the other project is us converting the non-potable to potable for irrigation in the Hemingway Valley.
Oh, okay. So. And then the last thing I was trying to get an understanding of was back to electrical, the feeder 54. So that was one to be done this year. Is that going to be started this year? Because it's not even, I think is it getting ready to go out to bid? So I was just wondering if it was going to be this fiscal year or not. And how important it is to be done before the Substation 3. I thought that was a link to get that done before Substation 3 was started. The cable 54, feeder 54.
Yeah, I don't believe that needed to be done before Substation 3.
Okay, I thought it was one of the ones that was at least preferred, if not done. Because I thought it was sort of an extension of 53, but that's why I guess I was just trying to get a better understanding, because the comments were just that it was, I think, the planning, I don't know if the planning was done, but it was getting ready to go to bid, and we're in January, so I didn't know if that was gonna be, when it was gonna be completed, and what sequence of events it needed to fall into.
Are you talking about feeder 63?
No, feeder
54.
54?
feeder 54. Yeah, so I thought it was like, okay, once feeder 53 was done, then feeder 54 was to be started and completed, and then you would start on substation 3, but maybe I misunderstood.
We're working on substation 3 concurrently with feeder 63 to sub 3 tie.
Okay, but feeder 54 is another underground cable. Is that in the same area similar area? Is that the San Felipe area around the area related to substation 3?
Yeah, it'd be on substation 5, but I have to take a look on the,
Yeah, well,
on the
that's-
map.
Well, I guess maybe it'd be better to have that done, so if we're keeping 3, active, and if we're making a new 3 and not rebuilding 3, then maybe it's not an issue. If you have to take 3 down, then I'm not sure it was needed for it to help 5 take the load, if I understand correctly.
So we're gonna expand 3. And then once the expansion is complete, we'll take the existing transformers out of service.
Okay, so you will be active through it. So some of the
Yep.
stuff that we thought was needed beforehand probably isn't as critical.
Yeah, it
as-
improves that critical path, yes.
Okay, I'm trying to make sure I understand the process. So I looked at the notes, I wasn't sure I understood that. Okay, that's all I have. Do you guys have any more? Okay, Howard, do you have any comments?
No, I don't have any comments at this point. Nope.
Okay, so sorry to expand that item. I just was trying to clarify a few things.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. And we have another comment. Okay, Carol, let's go ahead and bring up Carol Ellis.
Thank you.
Hello. Okay, a question, the question that came up on W2102 for the install PRV on A-line to the National Park Service. On the next, there's an agenda item at the city council meeting, the second meeting in January. And it actually asked the council to create a new project, and that is to handle when we were doing the flood control project down in Hemingway, a water line, and Joe can help me if I don't have all the details exact. Do you wanna-
It's the potable feed into the city near Katzenbach.
Okay.
Okay, but so it's something that the flood control isn't paying for. It's separate.
Yes.
Okay, so it's related.
So what we're asking council to do is to actually approve the emergency contract to get that issue fixed so that we can continue, and to transfer the money from that project, the W2101 we were just talking about, to that new project. And then, as Joe said, when we decide what's going to happen in the valley as far as what direction we want to go in, then we'll rescope that project.
Okay. I was just trying to keep track of the notes, was
Yeah.
all.
So if you watch to the next council packet, to the next council meeting, you guys will see that coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Again, I saw that one of the items was closed in the council packet also. One of the items was in the past, I believe, was
Yeah,
closed
so
out.
what happens and what we've talked about before is when the construction or the physical part of it is done, it takes us a little bit in the finance side to get it closed out. One of those steps is to go to council and get the final approved. So there's a lot of them that's one reason I really like that the dashboard gives you a construction complete, because the city manager's report will give you the finance complete. And once it goes to council and the council approves that it's complete, that's when we're releasing we're releasing everything, and then we wait for the final bills to come through, and then that's when you'll see it on the city manager's report where it's closed, and it'll move to close.
Okay, so we'll get those notes back then on this, because I didn't notice any notes this time. I guess since we're sort of starting.
There's not notes on the city manager report on the new format.
But will it be brought back? Because you just said you'll show it but there's no place to show it.
It'll show it because it'll be zero
Okay.
on the,
Is there any chance we
on
could bring the
available.
notes back to the city manager report?
not at this time.
Okay, well, maybe we would, if there's a chance, it would be helpful.
Okay.
So, 'cause I think having both of them is
I
helpful
think
to sort of see.
what we may be able to do is I can work with Josh and get that put onto the dashboard.
Okay.
So we can go in on the status and say the finance portion has been closed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Okay, so we'll close out item number 3 and go to item number 4, update on the utilities director regarding water and power consumption.
All right, thank you, Chairman Carr. So just a monthly update on our water and power consumption. Boulder City continues to lead the way in water usage conservation among SNWA purveyor members. For the month previous, the city's water usage declined by 14.4% from 2022 to 2021, and 12.3% from 2022 to the 2019 to 21 three-year average for the month of December. Energy demands continued to decrease for the month of December in electric as seasonal cooling loads drop in the wintertime with cooler temperatures. The monthly snapshot that you guys have in your packet that kind of shows you, that's at the meter at Mead and the tap. So the upper graph is the Mead, that's our main feed, kind of fluctuates between 10 megawatts, 8 megawatt demand, and then the BC tap shows a secondary feed, which fluctuates from about 7.5 kind of down. But expect that seasonal loads as well as irrigation on the golf courses, because we don't overseed, to be low and then pick back up pretty drastically in March.
Now, so when do we expect the golf courses to go from 6 to 4?
So the requirement on that is April of 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're expecting this year to be pretty much around the 6th and then start going towards getting the things ready for next year.
Yeah, and the way that will work will be at the end of the calendar year will be an assessment of the total water usage based on the acre feet of irrigated acreage, and then we'll be able to assess, if any excessive use charge is needed for the additional water based on the current water conservation code that was updated springtime last year.
Okay. So is this the place also doing some conservation issues? Can we talk about that too, or is that we need to get another agenda item for next time?
I think it'd be another agenda item. If there are any questions for me regarding water and power consumption related to conservation, I can try and answer those.
Well, I was wondering about the turf and if there's any new update on the turf removal and stuff like that, or if that's something you'd prefer to put on another agenda item.
So we do have a spreadsheet that's been submitted to SNWA for a separate interlocal. So that first interlocal covered the kind of the phase 1 of the municipal golf course. It was like 700,000, I believe, square feet. So this next one covered what we're going to do to everything, all the golf courses, the rest of the kind of parks, kind of areas that we thought, okay, that could be kind of non-functional turf taken out. And so that's put into an interlocal that will go to that to the SNWA board and kind of shows, okay, it's not something that we all have to do, but then if we do that, then we get that that rebate, and there'd be an easement put on that particular parcel.
Now, is that something that can be shown to the committee? Is that something that can be put on the website, or because originally we talked about also that there would be signs in the areas that there was a possibility of turf removal, and I didn't know if that was been started or not. And I think a lot of us would like to see, what's expected. It'd be nice to see what was expected to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it can be brought to the committee, but the definitions kind of in AB 356 or 346, whichever the non-functional turf law, I forget the number, but it kind of defines what is non-functional turf. So, yeah, there are certain areas and parcels that meet that definition, but then beyond that, just turf that we would removed that doesn't meet that definition, but doesn't necessarily serve a good purpose. That's what we've included into the potential rebate that say, hey, we're going to be planning to remove this turf and take advantage of the savings both in water consumption and then the rebate from SNWA.
Right, so I guess it'd just be nice for us and the citizens to sort of see what, because, so it's something that I don't think we've all seen yet, to understand what to expect, how much grass is being removed.
So the way that would work, that's gonna be brought to SNWA and then kind of later brought to council, but I could bring that to the committee.
I'd appreciate it, yeah,
Okay.
just put in the packet and we'd be able to see it and,
Okay.
and stuff.
So when we're proposing or we're going to take turf out of an area, do we put it on, I thought this was where your head, but maybe it wasn't. Do we put a sign out here saying, hey, 2 weeks, this is gonna look different because there's gonna be no grass here? Or is there an aerial map that we could use that says, this area is gonna be de-turfed, so people so the public has some knowledge of what's going on and why it's going on?
Right, we do have signs made that kind of show, hey, this turf is non-functional based on the definition and it's gonna need to be removed. So we're working with SNWA on kind of the details of that, like for individual parcels that, the individual homes. So we're kind of working on them with, what meets the definition and what could be excluded. The strips that are all in front of the individual homes, like that does meet the non-functional turf definition and will need to come out. So we'll have to work with the residents on that for the tree streets and the avenues. So there is signage that we've got to signify that.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
And that's something you'll be putting up pretty soon then, because it's not out yet, is it?
No.
Oh, okay. And then, is there a plan to help with the trees? So it's not just cutting the water off, the trees that exist in the parkways can find a way to save the trees?
We would try and do what we could. There are some that will not make it, and that way, we can plant a new tree in that spot. So yeah, it's kind of challenged based on the root structure.
No, I understand. That's just as long as because like some of the cases was said, we'll just shut the water off, and there's, especially in the tree streets, there's quite a few trees that's in the parkway.
Right.
So that would be a shame to lose that many trees if we just turned the water off.
Yeah, I don't think that water is going to be, the individual homeowners pay, are customers for that water. We just have to figure out a way to, because that is city land. And
Well,
so the way that law is structured, it does meet that definition of non-functional turf.
Yeah, so we take the water out, take the grass out, but don't have to take the trees out.
Correct.
But a lot of people, I'm not sure, are really aware of how to water a tree. And you take, as we talked about, so this a little bit, but it's just trying to make sure we educate people to say, okay, you can't just take the grass out and put drip line right next to the tree. You have to do something more.
Right.
And so we're losing trees in Boulder City because of going to the desert landscaping. People haven't completely understand how to save the tree. So I was just seeing if there's any type of awareness we could be put out there.
I think, planting a new tree is unfortunately that's what we'll probably have to do in some cases. But you heard from the previous presentation and we are in, pretty dire straits when it comes to our resource. And so, however expeditiously we can act, individual homeowners have, in those tree streets and the avenues, some have already elected to do xeriscape and stuff like that. But for the year, we are 12% down in our annual consumptive use of water from 2021. So that's a good sign, just kind of based on, conservation measures that the city has taken, conservation measures that individual residents are taking. So it just, based on the numbers, right, everybody needs to cut by about 50%. And when I say everybody, I mean California, Arizona, all that. So it's pretty drastic when it comes to that. So we could do our part, and that's what we're looking to do.
No, and I understand. We're all agreeing that it's conservation. I'm just trying to get facts out. That's all I'm trying to do, just so people are aware of what they can and can't do. So thank you.
Is there somebody on city staff that watches how often the parks are watered?
Yes, yeah. we're aware of how often
Okay,
the parks are
because
watered.
it just seems to me that I noticed, for instance, I was driving on Adams and, was going by where the old ABC Park where the library is. And it was, I don't know, just at dusk and it was being watered like crazy.
At dusk?
Yeah. The timing wasn't, but it seemed like that wasn't the only day last week that I saw that grass being watered. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, the parks are watered more often than would be a residential kind of,
Right.
1 day a week.
Right.
So that's understood. It's for a public purpose to keep the quality of the turf and the trees there. So
Well, I agree with you. I just thought we weren't in compliance.
no, that's for residential usage.
Okay.
Yep.
And again, we're not trying to grill, I'm not trying to grill, I'm just trying to get some understanding, so
Yeah.
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
But that's another great thing that we can do is change our water clocks to 1 day a week. And that's through, I believe, the end of February. And then we can go back to that springtime. So that's another great way. And that's all irrigation, not just spray. That's drip irrigation as well. So if we, and we are doing our best to monitor that. And those letters of violation will be sent out to folks if we find out that they're watering beyond their watering schedule.
Yeah, even with all the rain we've had, you don't even need to water 1 day a week.
Right.
And, as I drive around the neighborhoods, just as I'm going around Boulder City, we're wasting a lot of water. It seems to me. I mean, nobody specific, but, I'm not gonna turn my neighbor in because he's watering 3 days a week and he shouldn't even be watering at all because of all the rain. But that's the reason why I said, is there anybody on city staff that's paying attention to that kind of stuff?
So we have like, one development conservation specialist but we don't have, water waste staff. So we're working with the authority on sharing resources on that.
Yeah.
And then as we get to advanced metering, possibly a function of the meter readers is to kind of check and monitor that. But, we do have limited resources in
Yeah,
the
well, I
city.
just see all the SNWA commercials on the television about your watering, and I'm thinking, there's a lot of illegal watering going on as I drive around the city.
I
That's all.
was surprised just the other day, I was in Henderson driving, I don't know exactly when I saw a water cop. I'll call it a water cop, that's what it is. It was a car that's specifically out looking for, misuse of water. It had on the side, that's basically what it said. I'm here to bust you for using your water wrong. My question to you though, Joe, I don't know this. Is all of our water response time or watering time, is that all done remotely? Like, somebody sit someplace and they can program it, or does they have to go to each individual park and do it that way? I don't know, I'm asking.
Yeah, we cannot do all of our programming remotely. We
Okay.
don't have like a operations center for irrigation.
Okay,
That's what I was kind of wondering about
Yeah.
too, same kind of thing,
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks.
All right, any other
Joe, is
questions?
this is Howard, is there any plans to promote the changing of the watering clocks? Because I think that would be a good first step for us, to really emphasize what we already see on the TV about changing watering clocks. I think that's would be a key thing.
I can work with our communications department and get, additional methods of communication out there. Hey, reminder, you should have changed your watering clock. And then here's when you can change it back. So we could certainly investigate that and put that out to our media.
And then kind of move on from what Marty was saying about irrigation of the parks and whatnot. Unfortunately, I always see water from the parks running down the street. And that's just a bad example. I think if we could somehow figure out how to avoid seeing that happen in some of our, like, I see it on Wyoming Street all the time. Water coming up from the park there and behind City Hall. That water's just running down the street all the time.
I think, to me, one of the good things we can do is, at least personally, I could call somebody here and say, hey, I just saw this, can somebody at least check it out? We have to be somewhat self-responsive to this,
Yep.
in my opinion,
I agree.
right? We're not gonna have somebody go drive around looking at everything, but if we drive down and see something, a broken pipe, you see water, running down the street, it's up to us to call it in as well, and I think the public should feel free to do that as well. That's good. That's good to hear.
But to your point, Howard, we are aware of the, particularly at North and South Escalante and the parks where the grass goes right up to the curb. Unfortunately, the way the change would be to fix that would be to take that grass out. So it is, a functioning part of the park. So, I mean, that is something we're aware of and we're looking at, but it would involve kind of changing the design of the.
Yeah, I realize that's a problem all the time, the way the parks are all built and so forth, so. Okay,
Okay, anything else? Sorry to extend that.
Oh, it's okay.
well, I guess one thing, if we're on water use right now, I just, in our previous discussions, we were talking about expansion, how other communities don't curtail their growth. I just looked up some things here. In the next 5 years, the Las Vegas Valley is going to increase by about 52,000 people a year, and that's like 5 million gallons of water a year. That's going to be to water consumption in the valley. We need to consider all that in our discussions here as well. So just a point.
Okay, yep, thank you. So we'll go ahead and, so I guess that's why I'm just asking, whether we can ask conservation questions here or just sort of get it every so many months, just so
Sure.
we can sort of understand. Because we're trying to do our part. We're just trying to also state that Boulder City is doing more than some other areas in certain things too, with our low growth and other than that.
Certainly.
So that's why the committee has brought up other different points today also.
Yeah, but it seems to me, we heard earlier in this, today, that everybody thinks the Boulder City wastes too much water. I mean, that's what I heard from the lady from SNWA.
Well, I think the message isn't that we waste too much water, is that we're the only member of SNWA that doesn't recycle all of our water. So I think that should really be the key takeaway, is that, there's a resource that we're not putting back to, a good use as us as a member of SNWA. So I would try and keep that thought, and that, we're just not recycling all of our water like the other members.
Yeah.
But Joe, we're talking about 1 million gallons of water.
Yes.
And in the next 5 years, according to the growth rates of the city, we're going to increase our water use by 5 million gallons a day. Come on, let's be real here.
But again, to the point that, DOA made on the SNWA, they do not have the ability to control growth. So from that perspective, the only thing they can do is control how the water is used.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, I'll go with that.
I think the other part to take from this is what's the right thing to do, right? The right thing for us to do is conserve it in any way that we can, period. I mean, yeah, okay, maybe only $1 million, and I understand that, Howard, but if that's 1 million gallons that we can save, we should be striving to do that. Not at all costs, but you know what I mean.
I agree with you 100%. That's why the watering clock thing, to me, if we could control our watering clocks, I'll bet you could see some real changes. I mean, we've already had some, Joe just reported, we have some decreases in the amount of water we've used. If we just would adjust our watering clocks, and I looked at some numbers, and we can achieve less than 200 gallons per person per day here all the time if we just would. I would bet money if we would just get everybody emphasize the majority of the people, 60, 70% of the people, to change their watering clocks. I bet you we can make a significant change.
Yeah, one more thing, you're gonna love this. I'm gonna beat this dead horse over and over again. But that sign in front of Albertsons, in front of Habaneros, at the corner of Buchanan and Nevada Way, the one that City Council or Chamber has, when it's raining or something like that, can't we flash something across there? It says, "Hey, turn on, put your water in on hold," something, I mean, something for us to get the public more involved by showing that we're trying to put out the information. Hey, shut your water off. You don't need to be watering your palm tree that doesn't need the water anyway, in the middle of a storm.
Well-
This whole month I didn't need to do it, right?
I mean, to your point, Andy, the committee has advised rebates on smart controllers and expanded the utility rebate program. S&WA is willing to meet, the half of that, which essentially they can come out and do an event, and essentially you could get those really for next to nothing. And so that's going to council at the next meeting. And that's just to pump that up and word of mouth that, hey, you could get this for next to nothing and come out and then.
Yeah, I guess what I'm really referring to, and I'm sorry to beat this thing like I am, but it's real time. It's something that you can put out right now to say, as somebody's driving home, they can say, oh, it's ready. Oh, I need to change my clock or reset my clock or put it on pause or something so my lawn doesn't get watered on this week. That's all I'm saying. It's just something we can do. I understand what you're saying. They do that all the time. But on a daily basis, if we can start pounding it home to people, this month you don't need to water your lawn. You don't. It's raining at least twice a week. Anyway, that's it. I'm sorry, Joe.
Oh, no,
Well,
you're
yeah,
good.
it's just like I mentioned about all the commercials and the comments on if you're watching any television and news or whatever, SNWA has a lot of stuff on there. And it's like, who's listening to this as you drive down the street and you see that so much waste of water? I'm not just talking in Boulder, but I have 3 kids that live in Henderson. But yeah, I don't know how you get the point across.
I think just stay positive and take personal responsibility, and then share that with your friends and family, neighbors on, in a way. Hey, you don't need to do that, and do our part.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason we harped on it today is we're also trying to help by bringing it up more often, just seeing how things are looking on your end and what if we can do more. So again, definitely not trying to grill you, or anything. We're just trying to understand more.
Sure. All right. Any other questions before I leave the podium?
No, but you're obviously doing a good job, and I appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so we will close down item number 4 and go to item number 5 for possible action, discussion with the request of proposal requirements for a comprehensive electric, water, and wastewater rate study. So Joe, I guess we need to bring you back, or you can do it from your chair, whichever you want to do, however you want to proceed with this.
I think what we could do is, if we have the draft proposal, we could bring it up. Perfect. And oh, okay. Oh, you got that. Okay, nice. Is there any way we could zoom in at all, Holly? Sure. Okay. That's pretty good. That looks good. Yeah. And okay. Let's go to the scope outlined in from Raftellus. Yes. So just to kind of give a background on the language in the contract, this is standard contract language that's been vetted. It's been kind of pre-approved with legal review. So and we utilize what other neighboring communities use, like some from Henderson. So this isn't just kind of made up, but yeah, there are some boilerplate sections that may or may not necessarily, apply to this particular contract, but it's important that they're in there. So, just kind of keep that in mind as you're reviewing it. I think that, yeah, that's the page that's has a Raftellus on the letterhead, so after page 24 of 24. So I think, yep, that's perfect. All right, thank you, Holly. So this is in your packet to kind of go through, and what we're looking at is an update to the financial plan for all the utilities. And we have been in discussion with Raftellus, and they're excited to work with us again. And we think that this is the best way to move forward. So we're looking to do a data kickoff meeting with them tomorrow, and kind of get started on this. So the schedule to really avoid further impacts into the like a business impact statement study is to go through this budget cycle. And so we're looking at a couple potential changes to some dates, but you got UAC. I think kind of the key things for this committee to note is that we're looking to have that first kickoff meeting with the UAC and Raftellus February 1st. Then the tentative timeline, we've got a meeting in March with staff. That will be virtual. The results presentation to the UAC April 5th. And then in the proposal, we've got listed as May 3rd as the joint meeting with the UAC and City Council. That particular date will need to be adjusted to the week prior to April 26th at 1 p.m. And so that's really what we're looking at as far as a schedule. So a couple key pieces we've finished the 5-year IRP. That went well. Appreciate the committee's comments and feedback on that. So that'll be submitted to WAPA. So we're looking with a lot of emphasis on the electric fund. That seems to be the one that we'll need to make some decisions.
Well, the one thing is, before we scroll too far down, and I'm being a technical weenie here, but up there we see so you got city staff, and then the second line, Raftellus will participate in 3 UAC meetings and the utility. So what I'm understanding is actually there's only planned for 2 UAC and 1 committee meeting. So there's only 3 overall, not 4 meetings, correct? Because they don't plan to meet with us in March. That's just the staff.
That's correct.
So we'll have February, and then unfortunately, we won't have you won't be able to update us in March because our meeting is in March 1st. So if you have a staff meeting in March, we won't get an update. So we're only going to have 2 times for information, February and April.
That's correct.
So that's just so this proposal is, if they're expecting us to get a third point of information, it's not there.
Well, you have the third point of information will be the joint meeting. So.
Well, okay, so what we have is you're asking for our input on February 1st, and then you guys are getting more information in March. Then you're pretty much having a draft presentation in April. So we don't have any input again until after you put the draft together.
Once you have the draft, then you have further input at the presentation and discussion of the final study results. And I think that in April. Originally it was May 3rd, but it'll be the end of April.
So did they get enough input do we know yet is April 26th, did they get enough input to have it on that date, or are they still working with it?
They did respond that would be workable.
Okay.
So I think the key thing to note with this process is that there's going to be recommendations, and that what may be recommended doesn't have to be followed. And I mean, there's certain things that are completely off the table that we discussed We're not gonna look at a franchise fee. I understand that that was brought up in the past, you know, it's not even gonna be considered. So that's the kind of stuff that I wanna make sure that we're on the same page as we enter into this. That's why we have the advantage to really use, you know, Raftellus again. And I think that if you read through the proposal, the scope, I'm pleased. I think you'll be pleased. If you have any specific questions, you can ask them now, and I'll do my best to answer, or if questions come up, you can send them to me and I'll respond.
I've got a few things, but if you want, I just wanted to, since we were at that point,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that, because, well, the other thing is how much is do you know at all, the model, is that model going to be put into because one thing I do like is that they're proposing to do a SharePoint folder.
Right.
And they're proposing to have data in there. Do you know if the model's going to be put in there as it goes through, or just as when it's at a draft state?
I don't know what will be included on the SharePoint, if that's gonna be part of their product, or, you know, if just the inputs into the model are gonna be what's used on the SharePoint. But everything is gonna be open with what is available. You'll be able to access all the same information that we've got.
Because what might be available is in March, if something could be put in the SharePoint or emailed to everybody as just a blind copy.
Sure.
To say, here's the update, so we have something in the middle of March to be
Ready
prepared for April.
Okay.
Because like I said, otherwise, March, we don't get any input in March. We'll have, I guess, some input. You can tell us what's been learned in February in the March 1st meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Was there anything else you wanted to point out in this, Joe? So I'll just, because I can wait to make comments. I do have some comments, but if you wanted to go through, I was just making that comment since we were there.
No, not particularly. I think the schedule is really kind of the most important, with the goal kind of getting this budget season captured. We are working with Silver State. They're going to be presenting a budget draft to us in 2 weeks to staff. So as you know, wholesale energy costs for FY23 went up 28%. They're likely to go up again in the double-digit percentage. So that all has to be just considered and thought through. We'll do a comparison with our neighbors and kind of where we're at, but we're going to be looking at, especially with the new, if a new agreement is passed, you know, for wages, we'll have to factor all that in and just kind of see, okay, put our best foot forward. What are we able to do?
And so I guess if I understand correctly, we were getting some of our input from in February, what we thought. So a lot of it, I think, if the committee agrees, some of the variables, I think, was presented in my presentation. So if we can sort of start with some of the concepts of the presentation, I think that might not be a bad place to start on February and see if we agree. It just went right out, but because when you said the increase in cost, what we have in the electrical as part of the rate structure is, do you know, are they going to look at the one that we just had to incorporate this year, the section in the resolution to offset the
purchase power rider?
Thank you.
Yeah, they will look at that.
Okay, because that was, like I said, that was one thing in the presentation was, whether it's 6 cents is still what we should, or we need to increase that, so we're not changing it we're not enacting it every year.
Yep.
So those are things that I think we would like to look at. Some of the things I just wanted to bring up today was making sure that if we did bring things up, it wasn't going to increase the cost of it. In task page, the next page of this, task 3.1, it's talking about using historical customer billing. And I think, and any time we're talking historical, and we've talked about it, and I can't remember if we even talked with Raftellus a little bit, But I think we all want to be mindful of the COVID time of 2021 and 20 and 21, in that if we're using historical data, we need to be careful how that's considered, because those are times that were higher lower in some O&M costs, especially in 21 especially, because the city purposely reduced it, which everybody appreciates, but you just gotta be careful on using that data. But we had higher usage in water, and I'm not sure electrical too, I think.
Because everybody's home.
Yeah, and so those are things that, and then you definitely want to use at least, I would think, 2018 and 2019, because if you start with 2020, you're starting right in you're starting in COVID, and the historical data might not be totally accurate.
Yeah, I would even go through 22, because 22 is like a recovery year.
Right.
So, I mean, those are kind of voided, in my opinion, those are kind of voided years. I know it really makes things bad, because there's a lot of increases during that time that you gotta compensate for, but that's the way it is, right? I mean, those are just, we have 2 years of COVID and 1 year of recovery, so to speak.
Yeah, so you're more, so you've got, just as long as we take it in consideration, and really make sure that the COVID is considered and not just averaged in without any consideration.
So, I mean, the average, or the estimated consumption is in the energy budget from Silver State. So we've got that. We've estimated our water budget, you know, which we're hoping will continue to go down to get our consumptive use down. So, you know, those factors, is that what you're referring to?
But in some cases, like they did last time, they have historical data and they have future data. So if you started the historical data in 20, it's really not an accurate time. You need to go back to 2018 or 2019.
Okay.
So making sure that we're looking far enough back before we got into COVID, that we're not using COVID-only numbers. And I think that's what you're...
COVID skewed.
Yeah. So there's times we have to use those, because we did, but not only those, or at least understanding that they're problematic for Boulder City. Maybe they were for everybody, but ours, we definitely saw some different trends.
Okay.
And so we don't expect that same trend to go forward, is
Right.
what I'm understanding, the talks we've had in a lot of the meetings. So that's one thing, I just wanted to make sure that was maybe in the first staff meeting, just to make sure that everybody's, you know, that's just the Boulder City staff, and them would be good. I don't know if, and then the other one, I was looking at, let's see, this task. It talks about the tiers for sewer and water, and I think we would like to include that with power. So just making sure that they look at all the tier aspects. One of the things, whether levelizing is the proper word or not, one way to help the commercial is to say, okay, let's make sure that they have available to them a lower tier for electricity and water. So that if they use less, they can pay less, instead of starting at a higher tier, as we talked about.
Sure.
And so in this presentation, in this data, they only talk about water and sewer. And I just want to, and it says for conservation, but we also want the tiers for conservation for electrical also.
Yes, that's right.
So I just want to make sure that doesn't increase their cost. So if they know that off the top, then if that's going to increase their cost or not.
Okay.
I think that was some of my, because if I understand correctly, was going this route was we had a little flexibility to ask them to do different things with this route than possibly if it went for bid, with a spec type situation.
Right, and that they've already produced the model, and so they know what we have. We have more time with the Munis data. So, I mean, I think there wasn't a lot of historical data when they first looked at the model. So now we've got more to build on with the new billing system. So I think, you know, let's take advantage of what we got and move forward.
Yeah, the one thing I saw, and it definitely it's the financial group, the financial department knows more, but the last model I saw was there in certain areas, and if not, I'm not sure how it interacted with the dashboard, but it was, and they talked about it, and here again, the reason I bring it up is talked about, okay, they're gonna use the revenues with existing rates and use the revenues with changed rates. Most likely, we know that we're gonna have to make some modifications. I don't think we can avoid it. So as long as the model can be updated easier, because that's one thing, when you have two issues, you know, here's what they did in the old model was, here's one section in with the existing and here's the new one. So I don't know how that got related to the dashboard, but for updating purposes, it makes it a little more difficult. So I'm trying to figure out how to help the city update the model in the future, because that's one thing it states in here, and we've all talked about, is how do we make the model easier to update so the city can use? Am I making sense?
Yeah, I believe so.
And so I'm just trying to, again, how do we do that without, I'm just trying to make sure we can not increase the cost, not expand the time, but give some ideas of what might help.
Okay.
And so that's, and how much we need to do now and how much we can just do as we go through. That's all I'm trying to get across. So, anybody else have any comments on the deal? Did you have any more on that, than anything else you wanted to bring up on the scope?
Yeah, I didn't have any other feedback on there. I just, you know, I encourage you to read through, and if you have any questions specific that weren't mentioned now, let me know, and then I'll make sure that gets brought up.
Yeah, the biggest thing then I would just bring up in the, is the termination, the term section in the contract itself is, I don't believe that there's any expiration. And the term's not even really defined. And so even though that's used with other areas might use it, I think normally you usually have something where it says not to exceed a time frame. And so there's one way to look at it. What I'm looking at here is you're looking at 5 months, if you're saying January 15th through May 15th. You expand that to 6 months. You also have a 90-day clause in the term section, so you expand it out to 9 months, and you say the term will not exceed 9 months as of the effective date. And if you put that in there, then everybody has an expectation of when this would be completed by.
So I think that, it's my understanding, the timeline in the scope is really kind of the, you know, the goal of the schedule now, and that's dependent on inputs from city staff and that. So I don't know if that's something that we can, you know, put in contractually to say, hey, it has to be this, because if there's, but I can look into that.
Well, I think that's the case. Well, the thing, in most contracts, you want I don't see an end date in the contract or the scope. Because right now, the scope is tentative. So there's nothing final. They're gonna be a final in your staff meeting. So the contract doesn't have any finality to it. Most contracts have some type of finality to it, that this will be done. Now, if 9 months doesn't fit into what everybody's thinking, that's fine. But I would think you'd want this to be done within a certain time frame. When you use the word term and the word term is theoretically defined, because it says term with quotes, but there's no definition of the word term. And so all I'm trying to do is. What is the term? Right, all I'm trying to say is that it ends, because right now, this contract, to my knowledge, has no ending date. It has an effective date, that says, okay, but it has no ending date.
Well, it would end once the scope is completed, and we have a goal in the timeline of the schedule. There's a not to exceed dollar amount, so.
Okay, I'm just when I've dealt with contracts, that has been a contentious point, so
Okay.
I was just trying to be helpful with all.
No, I'll certainly look into that.
So, okay, that's all my comments then. Any? Yeah.
Okay, I guess I didn't pay enough attention to it.
Yeah, so, okay, so is there any other, Howard, did you have any comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, no, because I want to state that I do, the proposal looked good, and I was just trying to add in that, just in case, that's what I was trying to do, was trying not to increase the time and not to increase the cost by bringing things up now.
Sure.
Was what I was trying to do. But overall, it looks good, and there's a lot of things to to positive aspects. So if nobody else, and so you didn't have anything else, Joe?
No, I mean, this is a for possible action, so if there's any kind of, if you wanted to formalize anything that you discussed in a motion, you are able to do that. You're certainly not required to.
I think what I'm understanding is the city likes what they've seen, is that correct?
Yeah.
And so the only thing we would do is be approving it, but if it's your meeting tomorrow, if I'm understanding correctly, so it's pretty much thank you for giving it to us before it was definitely final. But if nobody has any major things, then I guess I'm thinking we don't need a motion.
Okay.
So, and we're good to go then, I guess. But thank you for bringing it for letting us see it. We appreciate it. I
Certainly.
appreciate it. Okay, so we will close item number 5 and go to item number 6 for possible action, discussion regarding potential agenda items for upcoming utility advisory committee meetings.
We mentioned, there was something mentioned earlier in this meeting, and we said, make sure that we'll put that on the agenda, but I can't for the life of me remember what it was.
So we had a presentation from SNWA, and that was not a for possible action. So we have the kickoff meeting with Raftellus as the first meeting in February, and I mean, that's in a couple weeks because it's short turnaround because we took a week off. So if you wanted to add a for possible action on the alternatives that were discussed by SNWA or any kind of what you wanted to do, you could do that in that February 1st meeting.
Yeah, I know the February meeting has potential to be long, but I think we have to. If they're gonna take this to the council and they're asking them to pick an alternative in February, then I think we wanna do our best to.
There's no two ways about it. We're gonna be discussing that one extensively, I think. So
Yeah.
it's gonna take some time.
For the SNWA or the?
Yeah.
So I think we need to have that as a possible action.
So I would say then we'll do the meeting, I would recommend that we do the meeting with Raftellus first, and then do the SNWA discussion, and that would be about it. And then the future agenda items, unless you see anything other kind of pressing. But those two big, pretty meaty items, I think, would take up a good chunk of time.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think so. I think we can do that. Yeah, so because since SNWA is gonna be, if Raftellus is virtual,
Yes.
and then so we can do that. I have no problem at all with that, doing it on the front. I think we don't have any problem.
In the beginning.
And then, because we're not even asking SNWA to come, we just want to discuss more of the facts, correct?
Correct, yeah, we wouldn't have SNWA here for that. It would be a for possible action, based on the presentation for the committee's
Would there be
advisement.
any, I'm not saying have them here, but would it be advantageous to have somebody available, they're listening in by phone or something to answer questions? I can't think of what it would be right now, but those are the people I'd want to ask a question to if one came up.
I think all questions should be sent prior to, and that, if a question comes up that meeting that like you didn't think of, then, we're gonna have to get it
We'll work
answered
around it
later.
somehow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you send us, because she said by the end of the day, I don't know if they're going to be able to do it that fast, but can you blind copy everybody with the updated material, and if I was understanding they were going to send, so we don't have,
I believe I can. I will double check that I could do that, but yeah, I believe I can.
so that way we won't have to wait till the package, we can see it and start asking things as soon as possible. And if we
Okay.
want something included in the package, we could ask you then. So we would then individually, if anybody has anything, individually email Joe. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes.
Okay. So if anybody thinks of something after the meeting and really wants additional information for February 1st meeting, and is that correct? That's what I see, if I looked at my calendar correctly, the next meeting would be on February 1st?
Yes.
And do we have anybody behind us on that date?
I do not believe so, but I could double check. That's our typical first Wednesday of the month.
So I was trying to keep today down. I didn't, I guess I didn't, I thought, but we didn't do too bad. But that one, we don't want to have to be done at 4 if we don't make sure somebody isn't that closely behind us.
That's a pack-a-lunch day.
It could be, yeah.
I would just,
On the first.
you know, hope that we could be done by 6.
Well, right, but if we had somebody come in at 5, we have to be out here at 4.
Right, yeah,
So-
yeah, I don't think we have anybody coming in at 5, but I'll double check on that.
Okay, and if we can just sort of keep it,
Polly's saying no.
okay, if we can just keep that clear is what I'm saying. We only have 2 weeks, but, so no, I definitely don't plan to stretch it out. It's got potential.
It will.
So, yeah, and then the budget discussion, I guess, then will be part of the rate study, because this is the time of year we would start talking about that. And since that should be part of the rate, because we definitely need to understand the budget to understand what's going forward. So I guess we'll see what happens in February, and if we need something in March, we might have more of a budget discussion, but we don't need that for February.
Okay,
But that's something definitely we're coming into. And so how much comes out of the rate and how much we're, again, because we're able to see the information and advise the council this year, correct?
yes, that's
Okay.
my understanding.
Okay, so that's why so we just need to make sure we see it before April. Because then the main meeting, there should be, I'm assuming if they've done it in the past, to be a March, April, and May meeting with the council?
I believe it's the first meeting in May, but I'm not positive on that. I don't know if that's the final budget, but I don't have the schedule in front of me, so.
Sounds about right.
No, but there was 3 meetings last time there were 2 tentative, two meetings, and then a final was in May.
Okay,
So, and it just, I think sooner that we understand what's going on. So, and it just, so maybe that's either that for March or for this, just what is the calendar? And even if that's sent to us, because I'm not sure, that used to be sometimes it'd be on the web, but I'm not sure it is, what the budget calendar. So we would be looking at the minutes, and we won't worry about then ongoing, we don't have any other capital. And then we have the Raftillis rate study, and that would be for possible action?
yes,
Right? Okay. And then we have the S&WA wastewater, and that would be for possible action. And then we have the discussion for potential agenda items. I guess that's probably, so is that 4?
yes.
Okay. So that should help keep us a little. So Howard, was there anything else for February or future meetings that you wanted to bring up?
No, Tammy sent out something yesterday about having a meeting in late April. Is that being considered?
That's the April 26th meeting, Howard, so that would be the joint meeting with UAC
Okay, I
and
thought
and council.
covered it. I just make sure.
Now,
I
I
have
guess,
nothing else.
I'm sorry, thanks. So I guess the one thing would be to clarify or at least, is that gonna replace our May meeting, or would we do the May meeting too?
I mean, I'm thinking that it probably would, so we should be able to cover everything from that. The rate study, the budget, it's all part of the same thing, so.
Well, the budget would be, but we don't wanna include the council. I'm trying to remember how we did the last joint meeting, because we don't need the council members there to do like our minutes and stuff like that. But I guess if it's short, we could do it. So maybe we just look at that in March and or April meeting, April 5th, we would know, right?
Okay,
If that's our May meeting, or if that's, and make sure that the council, I'm trying to remember how our other joint meetings have been. Have to go
I
back.
think that, and the intent was that would be replace the meeting
The
in
May meeting.
Yeah, so because the May 3rd meeting,
Was,
would have been during the actual UAC meeting. And so if we did the joint first, or I think the last time we did a joint and then they left, so if there was other things that needed to be just the UAC, it could be a separate meeting, but
Okay.
the
Yeah, 'cause
goal
then-
would be to just have one.
yeah, if we don't have one in May and they have their final one in May, then we would have to do something on budget-wise, because that would be our last time to advise, because I don't think we'll have all the data April 5th. It'd be interesting if we have enough data April 26th to do the proper advisement for the final meeting in May. But that's one thing, yeah, we can know on April though, so. But
Okay.
if that's what it's looking for, I don't have a problem. I was just trying to understand it. for April 6th, replacing the May meeting. So I'd give people more free time in May. So, okay, anybody else with anything?
No, sir.
Okay, then we will close out item number 6 and go to the public comment. We can, or we normally, do you want to prefer that? Okay. Okay, so so we talked about minutes, approval of minutes. For possible action, the Raft-Tillis rate study kickoff meeting. Number 2, for possible action, discussion of the SNWA alternatives for the wastewater. And then number 4 is the, for possible action, discussion regarding potential agenda items. So we would just use number 6, this number 6 to put that in. So we have 4 agenda items. Any comments before I make a motion? Okay, so I make a motion that we would, those 4 items would be the agenda for next February 1st, this coming February 1st. Any second?
I'll second it.
Any comment? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Howard?
Aye.
Thank you. Any against, say nay. Passed unanimously. I guess just for the record, Ned was not available for the final, but we have a quorum. So, just so for the record, for the purpose. Okay, again, thank you for everybody's time. We went through a lot of data, but I appreciate everybody's time and patience. And so now we will go to the public comment, which can be dealing with any subject related to the Utility Advisory Committee, not just this agenda. Again, so nothing was turned in for the second part, Josh? Okay, thank you. And I see that we're empty, except for Bill. And we will just go to the line. If there's anybody on the line, 702-589-9629. Just give you a minute or so to call in. Okay, so not hearing any comments, then we will close down the meeting for today, close down the comment period, and close down the meeting. And I have that we're done at, we'll round up to 4:18. Thanks for everybody again.
Thanks, Larry, good job. That was a long one to go through.
Thank you, Howard, for calling in. Greatly appreciate it.
I'm glad we could do it this way. It worked out good for me. I had some things I had to take care of out of town today, so thanks.
Didn't mean to cut you off. I was just trying to expedite things.